Chapter 377. When he said this, Xiaoqing also felt that something was wrong. She felt that there was something fishy about the appearance of a person who had already been declared dead. If Guan Haishan wasn't dead, then why did Mad Demon announce that Guan Haishan was dead? If Guan Haishan was dead, then the person who appeared now, who was it? After chatting with Zhu Machan, Xiaoqing felt that her head hurt even more. This matter was too complicated. Immediately after, Xiaoqing was attacked on her way home. Because she didn't consider that she would be attacked on the streets of Jingdu, she didn't take any precautions. It was Dai, who had sharp senses, who was the first to pounce on her. When Xiaoqing looked up, she saw that there was a bullet hole where she was originally standing. This meant that a sniper was secretly aiming at her. If it wasn't for Dai, she would have been seriously injured at the very least. As soon as she found the bullet hole, Xiaoqing immediately pulled Yan Qiyu and Dumbo and leaped onto the wall. Based on the shape of the bullet hole, she could almost guess the position of the sniper in the dark. Therefore, the wall facing the sniper was the safest. This was the same principle as the darkness under the light. Xiaoqing stuck close to the wall. After a long time, she suddenly rolled forward, exposing herself to the sniper's muzzle. She was already prepared to dodge, but the bullet didn't come. Dai was like a dexterous monkey. She quickly found the sniper's original position, based on the angle of the bullet hole, and other principles. However, there was only a slender bullet shell left. Someone tried to kill Xiaoqing. This knowledge made the three of them feel a little heavy. Then, who wanted to kill Xiaoqing? The most likely person was undoubtedly Wu Buping. First of all, she had previously ruined Wu Buping's plan. Then, she had a conflict with Mad Demon's people at the city gate in public. Most importantly, the people who had a conflict with her never returned to Mad Demon. They couldn't be found even if they were alive or dead. In terms of hatred, the one who wanted her to die the most was undoubtedly Mad Demon. Maybe someone had locked onto her when she just went out. That was the reason for the assassination attempt of fleeing thousands of miles away, after failing to hit the target. This assassination could be said to be all bark and no bite, but it made Xiaoqing instantly vigilant. If a person like Wu Buping wanted someone to die, he would definitely do anything. This assassination was definitely not the end. It was just the beginning. Xiaoqing was in danger. Let's go back first, Xiaoqing said expressionlessly. The few of them quickly left the scene, but they did not encounter a second assassination along the way. They told Gu Panpan and the others about this matter, hoping that they would be more careful when they went out. After all, they didn't know if the person in the dark would target Gu Panpan and the others after the assassination failed. It's most likely the Mad Demon mercenary group. Xiaoqing held her chin and said calmly, "After all, we don't have many enemies. The only one who urgently wants my life is probably Mad Demon." Xiaoqing said faintly, "I've been thinking about whether I should participate in the investigation of Mad Demon. At present, it seems that Mad Demon is not ready to give up on me. Strike first and gain the upper hand." Yan Hanqing calmly thought for a long time before saying, "If it's really Mad Demon who did this to you, then it means that they have a guilty conscience. If they have a guilty conscience, it's easy to reveal flaws." Xiaoqing nodded and said, "What I mean is, when everyone goes out, it's best to be careful. Try not to go out alone. Otherwise, I'm really worried." The few of them nodded and promised that they would try their best to stay at home for the next few days and not go out. After telling her friends, Xiaoqing also brought the news to Old Master Qin, hoping that with Old Master Qin's identity, he could find out something. After that, Xiaoqing was not plotted against or assassinated again. The assassination that day was like a flash in the pan, or even not a flash in the pan. She could almost confirm that the person who did this was indeed Mad Demon. After all, not everyone had the ability to assassinate her on the streets of the capital. Xiaoqing felt that being so passive was not her style. After thinking for a long time, she decided to lure the snake out of its hole. If she didn't kill this snake, she would be on tenterhooks when she took her friends out to do missions. She was worried that someone would jump out at this time to assassinate her or her friends. This was too passive. It was completely disadvantageous for her and her friends. However, Luring the snake out of its hole was also a skill. Although the mad demon mercenary group was very powerful and dared to assassinate her on the streets of the capital, they definitely couldn't do anything in the capital. Therefore, Xiaoqing decided that she would go and be the bait. Soon, old Master Qin provided her with a beautiful excuse to go out. Chapter 378. Old Master Qin had found some information about the Mad Devil Mercenary Group's secret experimental base. Although it was just a groundless accusation, it was just right to lure the snake out of its hole. In fact, at the very beginning, old Master Qin refused to let Xiaoqing go out and take risks. He always felt that it was best for a girl like Xiaoqing to stay at home safely. It was too dangerous to lure the snake out of its hole. However, how could Xiaoqing stay at home safely? She refused old Master Qin's kindness and only took 2 people with her, Yin Qiyue and Air Dai. Originally, she didn't even plan to take Yin Qiyue, but Yin Qiyue insisted on following her. She couldn't do anything about it. The place they were going to this time wasn't too close to the capital. It was a base in the north of the capital. This base was very small, so small that it didn't even have a name. Occasionally, when people mentioned this base, they would say that there was a base in the north next to a forest. This base was so small, but it was such a small base that the Mad Devil Mercenary Group sent people there again and again. According to the information old Master Qin gave her, there would be people from the Mad Devil Mercenary Group going to that small base every week. Sometimes it was on the surface, sometimes it was a small mercenary group that belonged to the Mad Devil Mercenary Group secretly. In short, there would always be people from the Mad Devil Mercenary Group going to that base 3 to 5 times a month. Such a small base, without any special products or places that others would pay attention to, why would it attract people from the Mad Devil Mercenary Group over and over again? Therefore, this base most likely had a problem. Of course, the most important thing was to lure the snake out of its hole. After Xiaoqing left the capital, she took Yin Qiyue and Air Dai to the small base leisurely. The itinerary wasn't urgent. In addition, she was worried that if they walked too fast, the people following them would be shaken off. Therefore, she treated this trip as a vacation. She walked slowly, looked at the beautiful scenery, rested wherever she went, and cooked wherever she went. It was so beautiful that it didn't seem like the end of the world. The people who were following behind were gritting their teeth. They had already sent a message to their superiors. They had already set up an inescapable net in front of them, and were waiting for Xiaoqing. However, Xiaoqing was leisurely. She didn't look like she was in a hurry, nor did she look like she was going to investigate. She looked like she was simply traveling. At night, Xiaoqing and the others would set up their tents and look for wild animals and vegetables nearby. They would eat different kinds of food every day. Today they would eat barbecue, tomorrow they would eat hot pot, and the day after tomorrow they would eat several dishes with white rice. What about them? He dared not sleep at night, for fear that Xiaoqing and the others would disappear when he opened his eyes. While Xiaoqing and the others were eating delicacies, the few of them were gnawing on dry food. In fact, they used to eat hardtack and dry food that was hard enough to break their teeth. At that time, they didn't feel too bad and were used to eating it. However, when there was a comparison, there would be hurt, especially when the fragrance of Xiaoqing's cooking drifted to the tip of their nose. The days of gnawing on dry food were particularly unbearable. The few of them couldn't wait to tear apart Xiaoqing and the others alive. If you have the ability to wander around, then leave quickly. If you have the ability. If you have the ability to investigate, then do it properly. If you have the ability to do so. Originally, the few of them thought that this job was very simple and easy. They bit on the dry food and almost cried. When they thought that they would have to live like this for a few days, they felt even more sad. Xiaoqing and the others' days could be said to be very happy. For example, this afternoon, Air Dai caught several pheasants back. They didn't encounter any other wild animals. Xiaoqing thought about it and prepared chicken soup with rice. Chapter 379. The rice wasn't the kind that was grown in the bases, but the old rice that was left behind before the apocalypse. After the apocalypse, Some researchers developed a drug that could allow the rice to be cooked 4 times a year. Since then, most of the bases no longer lacked food. At least, there would not be more people starving to death, because they did not have enough food to eat. It could be said that most of the bases had enough food and clothing. This kind of rice tasted slightly worse than the rice from peacetime. However, in the apocalypse, being able to fill one's stomach was already the greatest gift from the heavens. Who would care if the rice tasted worse? However, for someone as picky as Xiaoqing, they would definitely eat the old rice from before the apocalypse. When she went out to do missions, she would pay attention to food. As long as there was food, she would put it into her little treasury. Of course, she would eat the best food for her family. After the pheasants were cleaned, Xiaoqing put a lot of mushrooms and wood ears into their stomachs and cooked them in a pot. There was no need to put too much seasoning. Only a little oil and salt, and then a little star anise was enough. After the rice was out of the pot, chicken soup was poured over it. The mushrooms in the pheasants' stomachs were taken out as side dishes. Every grain of rice was wrapped in sparkling soup. It looked very appetizing. Those who were hiding in the dark were biting their own hands. They were about to cry. They also wanted to eat rice, drink chicken soup, and eat chicken. They did not want to eat hardtack. Especially when they smelled the rich aroma, they felt like they were chewing wax. They could not swallow it. After the apocalypse, who would bring pots and pans when they go out? Who would cook rice and stew chicken soup when they eat in the wild? It was so torturous. Most importantly, not only did they have to endure this kind of abuse, they also had to watch the 3 of them being lovey-dovey every day. Their eyes were going blind, especially that guy called Yin Chiyue. If he did not act coquettishly once in 3 minutes, there would be something wrong with his head. Have you ever seen such a coquettish man? After enduring for 5 whole days, they really wanted to rebel. If it wasn't for the fact that victory was right in front of them, they really wanted to jump out and let Xiaoqing give them a quick death. The only thing that supported them now was that they were getting closer and closer to the trap they had set up. As long as Xiaoqing and the others stepped into the trap, they would no longer have to suffer this kind of torture. On the 6th day, Xiaoqing finally arrived at the nameless base, the forest outside. She heard that there was a pond in the forest, and the water here was not polluted. There were even live fish inside. Xiaoqing was not interested in the pond. She led the 2 into the forest. As long as they passed through the forest, they would reach the nameless base. When they arrived at the base, they could take a shower, change their clothes, and have a good sleep. Xiaoqing was looking forward to it. She bit her nails and thought about what to eat for dinner. On the surface, she looked very relaxed, but in fact, the moment she stepped into the forest, her whole person became vigilant. Her whole body's muscles were tensed up to a perfect state, ready to attack at any time. If something unexpected happened, such as an assassin from the sky, she could react in an instant. As Xiaoqing walked forward, she suddenly smelled a faint fragrance. That fragrance was very faint, very light, and very pleasant to the nose. It was just like her autumn flowers, making people unknowingly fall for it. Xiaoqing's sense of smell was very good. The key was that she and Air Dai would not fall for it because they were zombies. Most of the poison was transmitted through blood, and the blood of zombies was pitifully small. Chapter 380. Moreover, all poisons targeted the human body. Zombies were just walking corpses. How could they be afraid of poisons? However, Yin Chiyue was different. He was a living person. Among the 3 of them, he was the only one who would be poisoned. While Yin Chiyue was walking, he was suddenly stopped by Xiaoqing. Then Xiaoqing kissed him. Without any warning, she kissed him. Yin Chiyue was stunned. His heart was filled with joy like fireworks. It filled his brain and his heart. His blood flowed faster, like a torrent hitting a reef. Then, something was pushed into his mouth by the tip of her soft tongue. Yin Chiyue was stunned. He silently swallowed the thing. It was the antidote he made. In order to seal it well, he sealed it in a candy-like shell and turned it into a colorful ball. This time, it was Air Dai who almost went crazy. He screamed and pulled Xiaoqing. He looked at Xiaoqing with grievance. How could Xiaoqing kiss someone else? She didn't even kiss him. Xiaoqing felt guilty under his gaze. Even if she had a legitimate reason for her actions just now, she still felt guilty. In the end, she couldn't help but lean over and kiss Dumbo. After all, she should be fair. Erdai was comforted. He held Xiaoqing's hand tightly. The people who were following them thought, "Fuck, it's too much. Let's go." Xiaoqing fed the antidote to Yin Qiyue and heaved a sigh of relief. She continued to lead the two people deeper into the cave. The fragrance gradually faded. When the fragrance was almost faintly discernible, Xiaoqing stopped. "What's wrong?" Yin Qiyue also stopped and asked in a low voice. Xiaoqing didn't say anything. She looked around and then picked up a thick branch. She poked the ground one step ahead. Then the ground collapsed. The pit and the sharp blades at the bottom of the pit were exposed. Yin Qiyue looked at the row of sharp blades and couldn't help but feel cold. "The few of you are sneakily hiding in the dark and using such despicable methods. It is truly laughable. You dare to scheme against me, but don't tell me you don't dare to come out and see me?" Xiaoqing coldly said. As soon as she finished speaking, a big net suddenly flew towards them. Xiaoqing hurriedly pulled Yin Qiyue and Erdai. The three of them rolled on the ground and went under the net. Dozens of paranormals came out from all over the place, forming an encirclement. The ones who acted faster were the long-range paranormals who were still hiding in the dark. Before the dozens of paranormals could get close to Xiaoqing, countless icicles, earth thorns, fireballs, wind blades and water columns had already enveloped Xiaoqing and the others. Xiaoqing raised her hands. Vines weaved into a thick net, covering the three of them. No matter how fierce those paranormals were, they couldn't break the net and fall on their heads. At this time, the dozens of paranormals were close to them. One of the fastest paranormals had already rolled in front of Xiaoqing. He thrust two ice blades forward and stabbed toward Xiaoqing's stomach. Erdai stretched out his foot and stepped on the man's hand easily. Then, he kicked the man's head off his neck with his other foot. No one knew how much strength Erdai used, but he kicked the man's head off his neck. His head was almost torn off while he was still alive. Blood spurted out like a fountain and dyed Xiaoqing's trousers red. Xiaoqing's hand gesture changed, and the net of vines above her head instantly dispersed, turning into vines that spread out in all directions. Mad Demon had really put in a lot of effort this time. Among the paranormals who came to surround her, each of them was at least a level 3 paranormals, and a few of them had reached level 4. Don't forget that there were also those long-range paranormals hiding in the dark. Their strength was definitely not weaker than the 20 or so paranormals. Chapter 381. Ordinary people wouldn't be able to withstand such a lineup. Even those paranormals who thought they were the best paranormals in the country and the world wouldn't be able to survive if they fell into such an ambush. Just by looking at this lineup, it really felt like killing a chicken with a butcher's knife. However, they weren't destined to be butcher's knife, and Xiaoqing wouldn't be the chicken waiting to be slaughtered. As soon as the ambushers rushed up, they found that Xiaoqing's vines were very scary. 3 of the weakest paranormals were pierced through by several vines. The vines shook lazily, and one of their corpses was torn apart and scattered on the ground. Those with higher levels could still fight. But don't forget that Xiaoqing wasn't alone. Yin Qiyue and Erdai were beside her. Erdai reacted the fastest. He jumped up and didn't go far. He just stood beside Xiaoqing and harvested their heads under the cover of the vines. Yin Qiyue was even more domineering. He stood still beside Xiaoqing like a mountain, his hands shaking as if he was conducting an orchestra. He waved his hands up and down, and from time to time, someone was squeezed into a meat patty by his ability to control the air. Those people looked at him. No, they had to get rid of Yin Qiyue first, so that they could fight Xiaoqing head-on. Then, they found that they couldn't even get close to Xiaoqing. The octopus-like vines almost filled the space around Xiaoqing. Occasionally, there were 2 paranormals who escaped and broke through the blockade of the vines. Erdai was responsible for harvesting their heads. They had lost several lives, but they hadn't even touched the hem of Xiaoqing's clothes. The situation is tense. Retreat! Someone shouted in the dark, and those paranormals who had suddenly appeared retreated like a tide. But would Xiaoqing let them go? What a joke! They wanted to assassinate her, So they came to kill her. But when they saw that they couldn't win, they ran away. How could there be such a good thing in the world? Stay here. Xiaoqing sneered. The vines in her hand were like living pythons, choosing people to devour. As long as they were targeted, they would not be able to escape. One of them was a level 4 wind elementalist. His speed was extremely fast, and when he couldn't avoid it, he could even glide for a short time. He thought he could escape, but a vine suddenly wrapped around his ankle. The vines only tugged at him, temporarily immobilizing him. This immobilizing time was only about a second. What could he do in a second? He was able to make air dye appear behind him and tear his body apart. As a level 4 paranormal, he shouldn't have been killed so easily, but he had lost his will to fight. All he could think about was how to escape, and he didn't consider that he was stronger than air dye. In addition, he thought that he had escaped from a hopeless situation and relaxed. Suddenly, he was killed by air dye, who was weaker than him. On the other side, Xiaoqing didn't plan to let anyone go. She pretended to be poisoned and said in a low voice, "Let them go." Then her body swayed weakly. Air dye and Yin Chiyue immediately returned to her side. Yin Chiyue's acting was the worst. He held his forehead and collapsed on Xiaoqing's body. I'm a little dizzy." Xiaoqing couldn't help but twitch her mouth. She pretended to be, I'm poisoned. The poison is so strong. But I have to pretend that I'm not poisoned." That person didn't go far. After all, they still had the poison as their trump card. Seeing that Xiaoqing and Yin Chiyue were really poisoned, those people became restless again. The leader waved his hand and stopped everyone from leaving. Then he quietly brought his people back. He approached Xiaoqing and took a look. Xiaoqing's face was a little pale, and her body was a little swaying. She looked like she had been poisoned, but she was holding on and not letting herself show it. He was very surprised and didn't shout anymore. He immediately waved his hand. "Go. Here's the chance." Xiaoqing also waved her hand secretly. "Here's the chance. Don't let anyone escape." Chapter 382. After everyone entered Xiaoqing's attack range, Xiaoqing calmly clapped her hands. Countless vines drilled out of the ground. They were like bones walking in a graveyard. As long as it was a living person, they would quickly be entangled by the vines. The range was too large. Almost all of the assassins were within the range. The only one who was outside the range was scared stiff. Then, he was easily swallowed by the man-eating flower that drilled out from behind him. The man-eating flower was like a king patrolling his territory. It slowly moved among the people bound by the vines. Whenever it saw a prey, it would open its flower crown and swallow it. The flower was only so big, but after swallowing 6 or 7 people, it burped to show that it was full. Xiaoqing controlled the vines and quickly tightened them into the bodies of those people. There was also Yin Chiyue on the side, who was responsible for the fish that escaped the net that almost broke free. After the poison was injected into those people's bodies through the thorns, it wouldn't be long before those living people became skin bags, filled with countless liquids. The vines absorbed the liquids through the thorns. In the end, only a piece of useless human skin was left lying flat on the ground. This was a terrifying scene. If other people saw it, they would definitely be scared to the point of wetting their pants. However, Yin Chiyue was so stimulated that he almost became aroused. He clung tightly to Xiaoqing's body and said as if he was dreaming, "Sometimes, I really want to be eaten by you and become one with you. Then even if you don't like me, you won't be able to reject me." Xiaoqing smiled and showed 2 sharp canine teeth. "Get lost." He said it as if she had that kind of special hobby. Even if she was a zombie, she was a zombie that paid attention to her diet and health, okay? Only brainless beasts and those brainless zombies would eat people like humans, who looked good on the outside, but emitted a rotten stench on the inside. Then Xiaoqing cleaned up the scene. She didn't find anything that could prove the identity of these people. Shaking the man-eating flowers and vines, she took Yin Chiyue and air dye to the entrance of the base. When they arrived at the entrance of the base, only Xiaoqing and Yin Chiyue were left. Air dye had already sneaked into the base. Although she was using the excuse of luring the snake out of its hole this time, she really came out to investigate. If she could find what she wanted, of course, it would be for the best. Mad Demon's men would definitely be keeping a close eye on her. The people in the base would also know in advance that she was coming. In that case, why not make her an existence like a target and attract everyone's attention? Then let Dummy go in and investigate. As soon as Xiaoqing and Yin Qiyu appeared at the gate of the base, the two guards who were lazily guarding the gate were so shocked that their eyeballs almost fell to the ground. They had already received the news that Xiaoqing had absolutely no chance to pass through the woods. However, not only did Xiaoqing come out, but she also appeared in front of them unscathed. How could they not be shocked, and their eyeballs fell to the ground? However, they reacted quickly. One of them quickly turned around, probably running to report the news. The other one came up with a force-flattering expression, then said, "You two look very powerful, superpowered people at first glance. May I know what business you have in our base?" Xiaoqing talked nonsense with a serious face. "We are here to travel." The corner of the man's mouth twitched. What's so good about traveling in this broken place? There were no mountains in front and no water behind, and it couldn't be any smaller. Why would normal people come here to travel? Chapter 383. Stop fooling around, okay? But he didn't dare to refute. After all, he felt guilty, so he said shamelessly, Yes, we have beautiful scenery here. There are many tourists here, ha 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 ha." The more he laughed, the more dry he became. In the end, he stopped. He probably couldn't lie anymore. Xiaoqing asked very kindly, "Is there any procedure to enter your base?" "No," he said reflexively. After saying that, he felt that his reaction was not right. After all, how could he let people in without checking? So he quickly made up for it. "You two are obviously powerful paranormals. If you are an ordinary person, you still need to be checked. You two don't need to." "That's great." Xiaoqing smiled and led Yin Qiyu in. The moment Xiaoqing entered, the man leaned against the door frame. His legs were like noodles, and he was sweating profusely. Motherfucker. It turns out that lying is so difficult. As soon as Xiaoqing led Yin Qiyu in, they saw a few people coming toward them. The leader was a young man. He looked very handsome, especially his eyes, which were smart and cunning. As soon as he saw Xiaoqing, he strode to greet them. Oh, such powerful paranormals coming to our base is really a great honor. Please come in. What are you two doing in our base?" Xiaoqing continued to talk nonsense with a serious face. "Traveling." Yin Qiyu immediately added, "Honeymoon." The young man was much more shrewd than the gatekeeper. His smile didn't change, and then he said enthusiastically, "If it's a trip, then it's best. You two must stay for a few more days. I'll show you around and see our place. You two can also tell me about the changes in the capital. I haven't been there for almost half a year." Xiaoqing asked calmly, "How do you know that we came from the capital?" The young man was stunned for a moment, but he quickly reacted. He chuckled and said, "Powerful paranormals like you two, where else could you come from? Besides coming from the south, there's an 80% to 90% chance that you'll have to pass through the capital. So I made a guess. Did I get it right?" "If you're right, there's no prize," Xiaoqing said expressionlessly. Even the shrewd young man couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed because of Xiaoqing's extremely cold and unoriginal joke. He laughed dryly and said, "You're all my friends from afar. I'll treat you two to dinner tonight. You must come. Of course, the most important thing now is to arrange the accommodation for the two teams. Please follow me. Oh, I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Guan Haishan." Xiaoqing's gaze instantly sharpened. Guan Haishan? The person that Zhu Machen said had died many years ago? She couldn't help but take a closer look at Guan Haishan. He had delicate features and fair skin. If you ignored everything else and just looked at his appearance, he actually looked like a pretty boy. Thus, Xiaoqing silently reached out and touched Guan Haishan's face. It was as fair and tender as it looked, with a hint of warmth. He didn't look like a dead person, and he definitely didn't look like someone who had died many years ago. Yin Qiyu grabbed Xiaoqing's hand and said with a bitter expression, "Didn't you say that you only love me? Why are you touching him? Isn't it good to touch me?" Xiaoqing continued to talk nonsense with a deadpan expression. There's a fly on his face. Guan Haishan was speechless. Then Guan Haishan walked in with an expression that said, "We're serious people." The accommodation that he arranged for Xiaoqing and Yin Chiyue was right next to his. It was the largest and most spacious place in the entire base aside from the base chief's residence. Chapter 384. Therefore, it was perfect to entertain the two guests. The main point was that he was the base chief. The dinner was on Guan Haishan, and it was quite sumptuous. During the banquet, Xiaoqing had been observing Guan Haishan. Was Guan Haishan really the legendary Guan Haishan, who had been dead for a long time? If so, how did he come back to life? Or was he not dead at all? If not, why did he carry Guan Haishan's name? If not for the fact that they were still in someone else's territory, Xiaoqing would have dissected Guan Haishan to see what the hell he was. Although both sides had ulterior motives, the atmosphere of the meal was still harmonious. After the meal, Guan Haishan and Xiaoqing talked about all kinds of things, and Yin Chiyue was a little sleepy. Xiaoqing carried Yin Chiyue in a princess hug and said, "My baby is sleepy. Let's talk another day." Then, she couldn't wait to get rid of Guan Haishan, this crazy chatterbox. Guan Haishan walked all the way to Xiaoqing's room and almost followed in. In the end, Xiaoqing slammed the door, and his nose was almost pinched off. When Xiaoqing closed the door, she said very impolitely, "I'm fine with talking about the scenery with you. Even if you want to hear me having sex with my baby, you want to hear it too." Guan Haishan, who was shut outside the door, rubbed his nose and walked back after a long time. After he returned to his room, he ordered his subordinates to carefully pay attention to Xiaoqing's room. If there were any problems, they would immediately report to him. As for eavesdropping, he wasn't stupid. He didn't think that Xiaoqing wouldn't notice if someone got so close. In fact, anyone who got close would be discovered by Xiaoqing. She had planted several thin vines in the corner of the door. They were not noticeable at all among the weeds. These vines were equivalent to her eyes and ears, helping her to observe the movements around her. Once someone got close or eavesdropped, Xiaoqing would notice. After the arrangement, Xiaoqing carried Yin Chiyue into the room. Then, she saw that the quilt on the bed was bulging. When she lifted it, Air Dai was hugging a pillow and looking at Xiaoqing with wet eyes. "How's the investigation going?" Xiaoqing threw Yin Chiyue on the bed and said in disgust, "Go take a shower first." Then she began to change the bed sheets and quilt. God knows what kind of people had slept on this bed before. She wouldn't be at ease if she didn't change the bed sheets and blankets. After changing the bed sheets and quilts, Erdai proudly lay down in the new quilt. He talked about what he saw today with gestures, and the tacit understanding between the two of them. Erdai walked around the entire base, and found two places that were heavily guarded. However, because it was daytime and there were too many people, and Xiaoqing had just entered the city, the security was even tighter. Therefore, Erdai could not sneak in to check carefully. He checked the other places, such as Guan Haishan's bedroom. He found something very strange in Guan Haishan's bedroom. It was a pot of fresh blood. Erdai checked it. The blood was very fresh. It was definitely released today. As for other suspicious things, he did not find anything for the time being. He planned to go out again at night. Xiaoqing touched Erdai's head and said, "Don't go out tonight. Guan Haishan's security will be very tight. Wait until tomorrow. Chiyue and I will trick Guan Haishan into taking us out for a walk. That will be your best chance." Erdai nodded obediently. Then, he curled his slender body into a ball in Xiaoqing's arms. He even saw Xiaoqing carrying Yin Chiyue back. Not happy. Baby has emotions. Chapter 385. Erdai was obviously a little taller than Xiaoqing. But when he curled himself into a ball and stuffed himself into Xiaoqing's arms, he didn't feel weird at all. It was very harmonious. Xiaoqing had no choice but to hug him tightly, as if she was hugging a large bun. Yin Chiyue came back from the shower and saw this scene. He also snorted, then crawled under the blanket and hugged Xiaoqing from behind. Xiaoqing was like the sandwich in a biscuit, the piece of meat in a Rujiamo. But it felt good to have a cool embrace and a warm back. Xiaoqing didn't fall asleep immediately. She thought for a while and felt more and more suspicious. Why would there be a pot of fresh blood in Guan Haishan's room? Why would he need blood? Xiaoqing wasn't so anxious at first, but now she was anxious to know how Guan Haishan died. Was this Guan Haishan really the dead Guan Haishan? She thought for a long time. When the moon was high in the sky, Yin Qiyu couldn't help but cover her eyes and let her sleep. Xiaoqing closed her eyes, and then the three of them fell asleep. The next morning someone approached. Xiaoqing was awakened by the small vines planted at the door. She patted Erdi's butt and asked him to quickly put on his clothes and find a place to hide. Then she turned over and didn't plan to get up. Poor Erdi had no choice but to crawl out of the warm bed by himself and find a corner to hide. The person who came early in the morning was Guan Haishan. Xiaoqing saw him through the vines, but she stretched under the blanket and didn't have any desire to get up. It was so early, and she really didn't want to wake up. She wanted to sleep a little longer, especially when she was in his arms. Then Guan Haishan knocked on the door. Xiaoqing said lazily, "What's the matter? If you have something to say, come in. The door isn't closed. If you don't have anything to say, leave. I still want to sleep for a while." Then, Guan Haishan pushed open the door and entered. He walked past the courtyard and through the hall. The moment he stuck his head out, he saw Xiaoqing lying under the blanket. Only her fair arms were still exposed. Yin Qiyu was resting on Xiaoqing's arms with a languid expression. A word popped into Guan Haishan's mind: dog. Male. Female. This kind of adulterous couple who flaunted their affection every day should really be dragged out and burned to death. Xiaoqing didn't feel shy at all. She stretched her head and asked lazily, "What's the matter, base chief Guan?" Guan Haishan smiled and said, "Didn't I tell you last night during dinner that I was going to take you two out for a walk today? I felt like we were old friends at first sight, and felt like we had known each other in our previous lives. So I couldn't wait to come and find you." Xiaoqing touched her chin and said, "Base Chief Guan, I also feel like we've known each other for a long time. I feel like I used to visit prostitutes in the nightclub before. Ahem, I met a handsome young man who looked like you." Guan Haishan's face darkened, but then returned to normal. He said with a smile, "Is that so?" Xiaoqing crossed her legs under the blanket and hugged Yin Qiyu. She said with a reminiscing expression, "That handsome young man was quite handsome, but he looked like a silver spear wax, so he left a deep impression on me." Guan Haishan's face completely darkened. After a long while he laughed and said, "It's not appropriate to keep chatting like this. I'll wait outside. After you two finish washing up, we'll go eat first, and then go out for a stroll." Then he went out like a small whirlwind. Yin Qiyu held back his laughter for a long time, then leaned his head on Xiaoqing's shoulder and laughed. After laughing for a long time, he said to Xiaoqing, "Your words were quite harsh. It was satisfying." Chapter 386. Okay, get up. Don't you see that people are waiting outside? Xiaoqing glanced at Yin Qiyu, then got out of bed and changed into simple and convenient clothes. Maybe there would be a chance to make a move today. Yin Qiyu also got up lazily. The two of them chatted and laughed leisurely. After brushing their teeth and washing their faces, they went out. Guan Haishan was very patient. He didn't seem to be impatient at all. He took Xiaoqing and Yin Qiyu to eat in a gentlemanly manner. Breakfast was a kind of fruit called breadfruit. When the fruit was hanging on the tree, it was green and remained the same color until it was ripe. The fruit was only the size of a fist. When it was cut open, it was full of starch. The hard shell of the fruit was peeled off and steamed in a pot. Then it was ready to eat. The taste was not much different from bread. Guan Haishan introduced the specialty to Xiaoqing and Yin Qiyu with a smile. He also took a breadfruit and broke it open. It was very similar to bread. He sighed. Although the conditions in this post-apocalyptic world are difficult, there are many things that we couldn't eat before. Even the national level of protected animals have become food in people's mouths. It sounds like base leader Guan has a lot of experience in eating. Xiaoqing broke a breadfruit and took a bite, then handed the other half to Yin Qiyu. She couldn't be blamed for being careful. It was just that the people around her were enemies. If she was careless, she would be fine. At worst, she could tear space and leave. But what about Yin Qiyu? She had to think about Yin Chiyue. That's natural. I don't care about anything else, but I like to eat. Guan Haishan smiled and said, I think the most delicious thing in the world is a baby's heart that has just reached 100 days old. It's cut into pieces, half-cooked, and then served with wine. No delicacy can compare to it. His eyebrows were full of smiles, looking gentle and elegant, but it made people feel cold all over. Xiaoqing felt that she was about to lose control of her murderous aura. As long as Guan Haishan dared to say one more word, she would dare to dig out his heart in front of everyone. See if it was black or red, then cut it into pieces and stuff it into his stomach. Guan Haishan seemed to have noticed Xiaoqing's surging murderous aura. He sighed and said, I was just joking. Why do you take it so seriously? If we're talking about delicacies, I have a few mutated white cranes here. I'll ask the chef to make some for you two to try. Then I'll be waiting. Xiaoqing said faintly. If Yin Chiyue hadn't grabbed her wrist, she really wouldn't have been able to suppress it. Looking at Guan Haishan's faint smile, Xiaoqing was completely sure that he wasn't joking. Xiaoqing could almost imagine how he cut out the hearts of innocent babies one by one just to satisfy his appetite. Such a person, even if he wasn't a zombie, was more terrible than a zombie. Because he had already lost his mind, his heart, liver, and conscience, he was worse than a zombie. But now she couldn't make a move, because a greater evil was still hidden behind the scenes. She had to find the demonic mercenary group's experimental base, and then pull out this malignant tumor. Guan Haishan was just a member of the demonic mercenary group. In the mercenary group, there were countless people who were as crazy as Guan Haishan. Looking at Xiaoqing's calm eyes, Guan Haishan was a little surprised, but he didn't say anything. He smiled and accompanied Xiaoqing and Yin Chiyue to have breakfast, and then enthusiastically took them out for a walk. There weren't many people going out with them, only Guan Haishan and a few ability users with high levels. They should also have a relatively high status in the base. Chapter 387. The so-called going out for a walk was actually taking a walk around the area. After all, there wasn't much to see in this shabby place. The small forest was one of the places he took a walk around. It was the place where Xiaoqing had been ambushed. While walking in the forest, Guan Haishan casually asked Xiaoqing, Did you encounter anything special on your way here? Base leader Guan, what kind of special things do you think I would encounter? Xiaoqing smiled and asked in a low voice. Guan Haishan laughed and said, What I mean is, did you encounter any special mutated animals or something new? Tell me about it. I'm very curious. Xiaoqing nodded and said, If that's the case, I actually encountered a group of ants right below your feet. They tried to bite an elephant to death, but the elephant felt itchy, so it stomped its feet and stomped the ants to death. Don't you think it's interesting? Guan Haishan's eyes were cold. He sneered and said, It's interesting. An ant wants to shake an elephant? It's overestimating itself. The only outcome of overestimating itself is to be crushed to ashes. Xiaoqing also had a smile on her face. I can laugh at this joke for a year. Yin Chiyue stood to the side, watching Xiaoqing and Guan Haishan exchange back and forth. In that instant, he seemed to sense a special energy fluctuation from Guan Haishan's body that flashed past. He glanced at Xiaoqing. Xiaoqing also felt it. There was definitely something wrong with Guan Haishan. The topic was quickly changed. Guan Haishan took Xiaoqing to see the pond in the forest. There were living fish in it. From time to time, they could see a fish floating to the surface and blowing bubbles. Guan Haishan said, Originally, I wanted to move the pond and the fish to the base and raise them in front of my house. I would take some good things to raise them every day. If I want to, I can take one out to eat. Later, I found that these fish are fiercer than me. He raised his chin. Immediately, a paranormal came out from behind him and took out a live rabbit from his bag. He tied it with a string and hung it above the pond. The water surface remained calm for about 2 minutes. Suddenly, several palm-sized fishes jumped out of the water. As soon as they jumped out of the water, the fishes suddenly opened their mouths, revealing a mouthful of sawtooth teeth. Then they suddenly bit the rabbit. This bite was really fierce. The rabbit's stomach was torn open. It kept struggling, and letting out pitiful cries. However, it was quickly eaten by the school of fish that jumped up. In the end, there was no trace of the rabbit's existence except for the blood on the water and the ripples that gradually calmed down. Is it fierce? Guan Haishan rubbed his chin and asked Xiaoqing with a smile. Xiaoqing's face was expressionless. She said indifferently, yes. At first, I thought that since it was so similar to me, I couldn't raise it. After all, two tigers can't live on the same mountain. Later, I found that they are still useful. For example, they can help me deal with some people I hate, and some people I don't like. Guan Haishan's eyes flashed and he smiled very gently. The only thing that makes me angry is that they always don't listen to me. They are very greedy. I feed them, so not only do they eat, but they also learn to prey on passers-by. Naughty! The anger in Xiaoqing's heart rose again. The more she chatted with Guan Haishan, the more she couldn't suppress the anger in her heart. She really wanted to cut Guan Haishan into pieces and chop him into minced meat. How could there be such a crazy person in this world? No, Zhu Machan said that Guan Haishan was already dead. Then, it was uncertain whether the Guan Haishan in front of her was a human or a ghost. Chapter 388. Guan Haishan seemed to be in a good mood. He said lazily, I'm telling you this because I want to tell you that it's fortunate that you didn't catch some fish to try when you came. I'm not worried about you. I'm just worried that my babies would be slaughtered. She wanted to shove Guan Haishan into the water and let him feel how much his babies loved him. Xiaoqing, who was about to lose control of her anger, said calmly, I heard that the scenery around the base is beautiful. I don't think it's a big deal. Are there any other places that are more beautiful? What do you want to see? Why don't you tell me? Guan Haishan said innocently. If you don't tell me, how would I know what you want to see? Xiaoqing wanted to say that she wanted to see him die, but she didn't say it in the end. What she needed to do now was to be patient and wait for Dai to find evidence or something. She looked around and changed the topic. Why don't we go to the forest behind the base? It's more spacious there. I think there will be a lot of interesting things there. Maybe we can even catch some prey for lunch. Guan Haishan, who had always been sarcastic, was not sarcastic this time. He said seriously, You're a guest. I should try my best to fulfill your request, but I can't fulfill this request. Why? Xiaoqing asked calmly. Guan Haishan said, The forest was originally a barrier for our base. We could go in to pick mushrooms, wild vegetables, and catch mutated animals to fill our stomachs. I don't know if our actions angered some high-level mutated animals. So one day, there was a beast tied in the forest. They killed all our hunters in the forest. Since then, I've been sending people to guard the forest, to prevent others from going in to die. I see. Xiaoqing nodded. Then let's go somewhere else to take a look. She said it calmly and casually, as if she really had no interest in the forest. In fact, she had ticked the forest in her heart. Although Guan Haishan acted normal, and had a good reason, her intuition told her that there was something unusual in the forest. The more normal Guan Haishan was, the more abnormal he looked compared to his previous behavior. However, Xiaoqing wasn't stupid enough to enter the forest and arouse Guan Haishan's vigilance. The more suspicious she was, the more she wanted to keep a low profile and investigate in secret. After silently memorizing this point, Xiaoqing followed Guan Haishan to walk around. During this time, Guan Haishan repeatedly told her about his hobbies. For example, he liked to tie the legs of his opponents together with iron wires and banish them in the woods. Then, he would release some wild beasts that had been hungry for several days and watch those opponents run for their lives. In the end, because of excessive bleeding and lack of physical strength, they would be torn apart alive by the wild beasts. Those things were wonderful entertainment for him. When Guan Haishan talked about them, his face was filled with excitement and joy. Xiaoqing almost lost control of her anger and murderous intent several times. Fortunately, Yan Qiyue was by her side. Whenever she was about to lose control, Yan Qiyue would patiently rub her palm, passing comfort and gentleness through the warmth of her palm. Otherwise, Xiaoqing would have exploded long ago. Even so, When Xiaoqing returned to her room at noon, she was so angry that she almost wanted to tear the house down. Yin Qiyu comforted her while raising her doubts. I feel that Guan Haishan seems to be deliberately provoking your anger. Chapter 389. Speaking of this, Xiaoqing couldn't help but feel a little puzzled. Why does he want to provoke me? What good would it do him to provoke me? I can't figure it out. Yin Qiyu also frowned and analyzed. Could it be that he wants to provoke you and make you ignore other details? So this base should be hiding a secret. According to what you said, Xiaoqing thought for a while and said, could it be that forest? Both of them thought of that forest and Guan Haishan's completely different attitude when talking about the forest. My intuition tells me that this matter isn't that simple. Xiaoqing thought carefully for a long time, and then said, when Dai comes back, ask him if he found anything. If he didn't find anything else, we have to go into the forest. Even if we know it's a trap, we have to go in. What's that saying again? The most dangerous place is the safest place. It's very likely that they think so too. Xiaoqing paced back and forth. After a while she said, I have a feeling that the thing we are looking for is in that forest. Guan Haishan is not stupid, and he knows that we are not stupid. If this is not a trap, then it's best. If this is a trap, then he will use real bait to lure us in. So no matter what, we have to check out that forest. Yin Qiyu nodded. He understood Xiaoqing's mentality very well. This mentality was called invincibility. All conspiracies and tricks were nothing in the face of absolute strength. Therefore, Xiaoqing was not afraid of any traps or conspiracies. However, Yin Qiyu was afraid. He was not afraid of death. In fact, he didn't care about death. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so careless about his own body. But he was afraid of Xiaoqing. Even if it was just an injury, he didn't want it to happen to Xiaoqing. At night, they went out to have dinner with Guan Haishan. This time, Guan Haishan was much more normal. He didn't deliberately provoke Xiaoqing and Yin Qiyu. When she returned, Dai was already back. When he told Xiaoqing what had happened, Xiaoqing almost wanted to rush out and burn down the entire base. It was Yin Qiyu and Dai who held onto her thighs and refused to let her go. This time, Dai infiltrated two heavily guarded places. The former was a grain storage, while the latter was also a grain storage. However, the latter's grain storage was only used by Guan Haishan alone. The people locked inside were all young girls and children. According to the caretaker, there were girls being bled every day. The blood that was drained was supplied to Guan Haishan. However, in order not to frequently go out to catch girls and be discovered by others, they would not kill these girls. Every time, they would only release the girls' bodies to the limit and then slowly nourish them. When they were almost nourished, they would then bleed them. And because Guan Haishan liked virgin blood, those people didn't dare to defile these girls. However, those children were pitiful. It was said that Guan Haishan liked to eat children's hearts. Of course, he wouldn't waste the rest of the children's bodies. He asked the chef to cut them into strips and air dry them. According to Guan Haishan, children's flesh was tender and had a unique fragrance. After air drying, it tasted very good. How can there be such a crazy person in this world? Xiaoqing let out a long breath. Her hands that were grabbing the bed sheet were covered with blue veins. If it weren't for the fact that she wanted to find the experimental base and save more people from suffering, if it weren't for the fact that she wanted to expose the mad demon's true colors and remove this malignant tumor, she really wanted to rush out and kill Guan Haishan and everyone in this base. Chapter 390. If Guan Haishan was a beast, then the people in the base were also murderers who helped the tyrant. Qing, don't be impulsive. Yin Qiyu hugged her tightly. Let's wait until we finish exploring the forest. As long as we find the mad demon's experimental base and have evidence, we can completely destroy the mad demon mercenary group. Otherwise, even if you kill Guan Haishan and the people in this base, Lu Haishan and Chun Haishan will appear in the future. More people will suffer. It's not worth it. I know. Xiaoqing took a deep breath and said, as soon as we enter the forest, Guan Haishan will find out that we are not here. So, no matter what, we have to contact old Master Qin first. Even if something happens to us, at least the news can be sent back. Dai, this task will be handed to you. Dai immediately shook his head and held Xiaoqing's hand tightly. He couldn't return to the capital alone when Xiaoqing was in the most danger. You haven't shown up, so it's best if you go back. Xiaoqing touched Dai's head. Don't be stubborn, okay? Dai didn't speak. He just held Xiaoqing tightly. After a while, Yin Qiyu said, I'll go back. He was very calm. Even if he didn't want to abandon Xiaoqing in such a dangerous situation, someone had to do it. Besides, Dai was more suitable than him to stay. He would get injured, bleed, and lose his combat ability. If something happened, he might become a burden to Xiaoqing. However, Dai wouldn't. Although Dai was slightly weaker, he didn't feel pain, didn't know fatigue, and could recover quickly. In terms of combat ability, he was stronger than Yin Qiyu. Yin Qiyu knew that now was not the time to consider things based on emotions. In any case, the best person to stay was Dai. Xiaoqing patted him on the shoulder and joked, Our safety depends on you. Yin Qiyu stepped forward and hugged Xiaoqing tightly. Then she said in a low voice, If anything happens to you, I will immediately end my life and go over to accompany you. I believe that Dai and the others will also make the same choice. So take care of yourself. Otherwise it won't be as simple as 2 lives. Xiaoqing's eyes curved into crescents as she smiled and said softly, I know, so we will definitely come back safely. Then for the first time, Yin Qiyu hugged Dai without any reservations and said, I can't stay by Qing's side and face danger with her. So I'll leave the task of protecting Qing to you. I trust you. Yin Qiyu knew that in the face of fatal danger, Dai would definitely stand in front of Xiaoqing. Although the two of them were love rivals, the more rivals they were, the more they could understand each other. Although Dai couldn't speak, Yin Qiyu knew very well what Dai wanted to say. As long as he was alive, he would not let Xiaoqing get hurt. If anyone wanted to hurt Xiaoqing, they would have to step over his dead body. Why do you make it sound like you're going to be separated forever? Xiaoqing wanted to liven up the atmosphere. We're just going to the forest to investigate. Maybe by the time you come over with your men, we'll already be walking back with Guan Haishan's head. Okay. Yin Qiyu leaned forward and kissed Xiaoqing. I'll leave tonight. Be careful. Xiaoqing prepared some food and necessities for him, and packed them. Then, she secretly sent Yin Qiyu away. The next day, Guan Haishan came to look for Xiaoqing again. He knocked on the door. After a while, he heard Xiaoqing say, I won't go out today. My baby has chicken pox. Guan Haishan rolled his eyes and then asked, What kind of chicken pox? We have doctors in the base, but we won't let them come over. Chapter 391. He didn't believe it. A high-level paranormal, who was fine yesterday suddenly had chicken pox today. Who was she kidding? Xiaoqing came over in her pajamas and opened the door. Then she said regretfully, Although I would like to walk around again, my baby is very uncomfortable, so forget it. There's no need to see a doctor. She'll be fine after lying down for 2 days. Guan Haishan poked his head slightly and saw a person lying on the bed with her back to him. She was curled up into a ball and looked very uncomfortable. He immediately smiled and said, Then I won't disturb you. I'll get someone to bring you lunch. Xiaoqing nodded and mercilessly shut Guan Haishan out of the door. As soon as Guan Haishan left, Dai got up from the bed and went out of the window first. Xiaoqing casually packed some snacks, then tore open the space and left casually. On the other side, as soon as Guan Haishan left, he ordered his subordinates to carefully observe Xiaoqing's residence. No matter what happened, they were to inform him. However, at this moment, Xiaoqing was already outside the base. She held a dried purple potato in her mouth and waited for a while before she met Dai. Then, the two of them went in the direction of the forest. Normally, this forest was next to the mountain, and there was such a legend. Usually, no one would come here. However, as soon as Xiaoqing and Dai entered the forest, they found a path that had been trampled by people. In other words, people often walked on this path. Otherwise, It wouldn't have appeared out of nowhere. Didn't a famous writer say that there was no path in this world, but when many people walked on it, it would naturally appear? Follow me. Xiaoqing pulled air dye and walked forward along the path. She was sure that when Guan Haishan found that they were gone, it would be at least lunchtime. More than 4 hours was enough for her to search the entire forest. Especially for people like her and air dye, who were extremely fast and were like fish in water in the forest. It was even easier. Xiaoqing took air dye and jumped directly from one tree to another. This way of traveling was much faster than running on the ground. As she jumped, she observed the traces on the ground. If there were people walking around often, it must be Guan Haishan's group. As long as they reached the end of the path, they might find what they were looking for. After about 2 hours, they entered the depths of the forest. The branches and leaves above their heads were so dense that they blocked the sunlight. And that was the end of the path. There were no more traces in front of them. However, the traces showed that there were only a few trees. There was nothing else at all. Could I have guessed wrongly? Xiaoqing frowned and thought carefully about whether she had missed anything. Did she miss something? But no matter how hard she thought, she couldn't think of anything. She walked back and forth and started to think from another perspective. If she wanted to build a base that she didn't want anyone to know about and wanted to hide it, where would she build it? For this base, the safest place around would be this forest. But there was clearly nothing else in this forest. Could it be? Xiaoqing had a flash of inspiration. Underground. Once she thought about this, she suddenly realized that she had walked into a wrong place. Since Guan Haishan was a smart person, why did he suddenly behave so strangely when talking about the forest? It was as if he was deliberately leading her to think about the forest. The more Xiaoqing thought about it, the more she felt that something was wrong. Finally, she realized that she had really walked into a trap that she had fallen into from the moment she walked through the gate of the base. Chapter 392. The most dangerous place is also the safest place. What a good saying. What a good saying. Guan Haishan was indeed a cunning man. Let's go back. Xiaoqing grabbed air dye and prepared to go back. If she guessed correctly, Guan Haishan might even know that she and air dye were going to enter the forest. Just as they turned around and took 2 steps, Xiaoqing suddenly grabbed air dye's collar and rolled backward. A dagger was stuck in the place where she had been standing. I thought you would think about it for a while before you realized the problem. Guan Haishan squatted on a branch and said with a smile, "It's not a loss to call you an old fox." Xiaoqing looked at Guan Haishan coldly. "Since you have the guts to appear in front of me like this, it means that you have the confidence to kill me." "Of course I do. It's just that I didn't expect you to be a 5th level paranormal already," Guan Haishan said regretfully. "It must have been very difficult for you to come this far, as a 5th level paranormal. It's just a pity that you can only go this far. Anyone can talk big, but if you don't have the ability to do so, I'm afraid you'll break your front teeth in the end." Xiaoqing said coldly. She seemed to be very confident, but in fact, she wasn't at all. Guan Haishan knew that she was a 5th level paranormal, but he still dared to appear in front of her alone. It fully showed that his strength was not lower than a 5th level paranormal. He was even confident that he could kill a 5th level paranormal. "Whether I'm talking big or not, you'll know soon enough." Guan Haishan straightened up, and there was a gentle smile on his delicate face. "Since we've known each other for so long and have a good chat, I'll give you a chance. Let's fight one-on-one. If you defeat me, you can even kill me. I won't call my companions over. On the contrary, if I defeat you, both of you will die." "All right." Xiaoqing patted air dye's shoulder and gestured for him to stand aside and watch the fight. If Guan Haishan was really strong, then air dye wouldn't be able to help. Actually, Xiaoqing was a little annoyed. She had been through a lot, but she had failed miserably. She had been too complacent recently, and had been too confident in her own strength. That was why she had fallen into a trap today. With her intelligence, she should have been able to tell that there was something wrong with Guan Haishan's words, and deduced that it was a trap. She didn't have time to wallow in self-pity. She took a step forward and said indifferently, "Life and death is up to fate. Come." I'll let you make the first move, Guan Haishan said confidently as he leaped and landed in front of Xiaoqing. Xiaoqing wasn't the kind of person who cared too much about face. Since Guan Haishan was so confident and wanted her to make the first move, she would make the first move. Xiaoqing quickly condensed the superpower in her body. A vine whip appeared in her hand, and she whipped it towards Guan Haishan. Guan Haishan reached out and grabbed Xiaoqing. Don't tell me that a 5th-level ability user like you can only do this. Xiaoqing frowned slightly. She found that the thorns on the vine couldn't pierce Guan Haishan's skin. With a thought, several vines broke out of the ground and stabbed at Guan Haishan's feet and thighs. Guan Haishan stomped his foot and leaped forward. Then he grabbed 2 vines and tore them apart as if they were noodles. That's interesting. Xiaoqing observed Guan Haishan carefully. She kept releasing vines to harass Guan Haishan, but Guan Haishan didn't use his power. He only used his speed and physical strength to run around the vines. Chapter 393. Xiaoqing suddenly had a guess. She clapped her hands, and dozens of vines drilled out of the ground and surrounded Guan Haishan. Guan Haishan sneered and said, "Petty tricks." As soon as his voice faded, his expression changed. It was too late for him to change his action. Xiaoqing appeared in front of him out of thin air, her hands stabbing into his chest. Guan Haishan subconsciously reached out to block, but his hands and feet were entangled by the vines. He was able to get rid of the vines soon, but that short second was enough for Xiaoqing to put her hands into his chest. The moment her palm entered Guan Haishan's chest, Xiaoqing felt that something was wrong. Under normal circumstances, she would definitely be able to feel the warm texture of his skin wrapping around her palm, as well as the rapid flow of blood. But she didn't. It was as if she had stabbed into a piece of rotten meat. There was no warmth, and even the blood had dried up. Xiaoqing furrowed her brows and tore at both sides with her hands. Then, she tore open Guan Haishan's chest. There was a heart that looked fresh, but it wasn't beating. Under the fresh skin, there were muscles that had lost their vitality. Guan Haishan grabbed Xiaoqing's wrist and said with a smile, "Surprised? Scared? Or surprised?" Xiaoqing broke away from his hand and quickly stepped back. Guan Haishan didn't stop her. He calmly closed his chest and patted it. Then, granulation grew out of the wound and quickly mended his chest. Soon, there was only an ugly scar on Guan Haishan's chest. It was impossible to tell that he had been injured. Guan Haishan touched the scar on his chest obsessively, then looked at Xiaoqing and said, "Do you see it? This is God's masterpiece. Only I have such a perfect body. Only I, and I am the closest to God." He said as if he was talking in a dream. How could those stupid humans think that zombies are monsters? That is clearly a more successful evolution of human beings. A more successful evolution than superpowered people. Like me, I can't die. I am immortal. I am the spokesperson of God. You transformed yourself. Xiaoqing didn't know how to describe Guan Haishan anymore. She hated her body, hated the fact that she couldn't taste food, hated the fact that she couldn't feel happiness or pain, and was numb like a corpse. She hated her own rotten insides, and hated the fact that she was a burden to Guan Haishan, causing him to become like this. However, he did not expect that there would be someone who would be happy that he had turned into such a ghostly appearance. Guan Haishan was still smiling. "I think I should let you know the reason before you die. Yes, I died a long time ago. At that time, I was seriously injured and on the verge of death. After the leader asked for my opinion, he asked a few researchers to modify my body. They implanted a special zombie virus in me, causing my body to lose its ability to function. However, my brain retained a certain amount of activity. At that time, they thought the experiment had failed because I didn't wake up. However, I didn't die completely until 2 months ago." Guan Haishan sneered. "The demonic frenzy mercenary group has long noticed you. Do you know why? Those researchers from the south didn't come to join the research institute, but to join us. However, they are all dead. That old man died in your hands, right?" "Yes." Xiaoqing decisively admitted it. She looked Guan Haishan up and down and said after a long while, Do you think you can defeat me because of your strong recovery ability? Guan Haishan opened his arms and said arrogantly. Isn't that enough? You can't kill me, so I can only kill you. Chapter 394. Xiaoqing smiled. She put away her vines and walked towards Guan Haishan step by step. A frog at the bottom of a well. She didn't seem to be walking fast. Step by step, she looked like she was taking a leisurely stroll. However, she soon appeared in front of Guan Haishan. Guan Haishan was also very fast. His black and shiny nails moved as he approached Xiaoqing. As soon as he got close, Xiaoqing grabbed his shoulder and punched Guan Haishan in the face. This time Guan Haishan was stunned. Xiaoqing didn't seem to be moving fast. But before he could react, her fist had already landed on his face. Xiaoqing was very strong. Guan Haishan's neck made a groaning sound with difficulty. Then with a crack it broke. Then, Xiaoqing kicked Guan Haishan's chest hard, sending him flying. If it weren't for a tree blocking him, he might have flown dozens of meters. Guan Haishan fell to the ground like a broken rag doll, his head drooping like a broken rag doll. He reached out his hand, and with a crack he straightened his head. Then he rubbed his chest and got up again. I told you, these attacks are useless against me. Is that so? Xiaoqing suddenly took a step forward and appeared in front of him again. She didn't give him a chance to fight back at all. She beat him up fiercely. In the end, Guan Haishan was beaten up. He looked like a doll that had been sewn and mended many times, and then thrown away. Xiaoqing stepped on his head and said coldly, even if you have a strong recovery ability, so what? You don't even have a chance to fight back. Ah! Guan Haishan reached out and grabbed Xiaoqing's ankle. Suddenly, as though he had no bones, he slipped behind Xiaoqing and hugged Xiaoqing. Then, countless bone spurs drilled out from his chest and stabbed toward Xiaoqing. At this time, it was too late to tear space. However, Xiaoqing didn't panic. She allowed the bone spurs to pierce into her body. Then, she grabbed Guan Haishan's arms and twisted them like fried dough twists. This time, it was Guan Haishan's turn to be shocked. He didn't care that his arms had become fried dough twists. He quickly retreated and said, No, no. His bone spurs were produced after his body mutated. After piercing into a human, they could suck their opponent's blood. But just now, after his bone spurs pierced Xiaoqing's body, they didn't suck a single drop of blood. While Guan Haishan was still in shock, Xiaoqing quickly stepped forward and grabbed his left hand. Her nails pierced into his flesh, and then she directly tore his arm off. Guan Haishan stepped back in a panic, not caring about that arm anymore. He dared to challenge Xiaoqing, a 5th-level superpower possessor, because he had an immortal body. He couldn't die anyway. Then, he found that Xiaoqing didn't seem to be right either. Xiaoqing loosened her muscles and threw away the arm. Then she said lazily, Baby, stop him. Apart from Guan Haishan's special body, his strength was just that of a 4th-level superpower possessor. He couldn't withstand a single blow. Erdai jumped down from the tree and stabbed her sharp nails into Guan Haishan's skull. Guan Haishan rolled on the ground in a sorry state. He was no longer as complacent as he was before. While dodging, he said reluctantly, No, impossible. You are a superpower possessor. How could you? Xiaoqing looked at him with pity. Immortal body, huh? You are really short-sighted. I'd rather not have such an immortal body. You. Guan Haishan dodged Erdai's attack and said hurriedly, Since you are not a living person, then we are the same. We are the same kind. Why don't you stand on my side? Do you want power? Or wealth? Or beauty? I can give you both. Chapter 395. Xiaoqing looked at Guan Haishan coldly. After he finished, she sneered. Who is the same kind as you? Don't dirty my eyes. Guan Haishan said anxiously while rolling on the ground. For those ants, you drew your sword against your own kind. What's the point? Once they know you're a zombie, they won't care about what you've done for them. Why bother? Say it again. Who is the same kind as you? Xiaoqing said with disgust. My father and mother are both human beings. At least I know what I am. At least I won't eat living people without conscience. She wanted to let Erdai practice, Maybe he could take the opportunity to break through, but Guan Haishan was too disgusting. She couldn't help but make a move. She fixed Guan Haishan with her vines. Then Air Dai directly stabbed his fingernails into Guan Haishan's skull. In the next second, Xiaoqing waved her hand. A black space crack tore Guan Haishan into pieces. Guan Haishan didn't resist until he died. He opened his eyes wide and murmured, "I don't want to die." Xiaoqing didn't pity him at all. When he wantonly took the lives of those children, did he ever consider that they didn't want to die either? Air Dai opened Guan Haishan's skull. It found that Guan Haishan's crystal nuclei were all black. It curled its lips and threw them away. Dirty. After making sure that Guan Haishan was completely dead, Xiaoqing destroyed his body. Then she took Air Dai back. Since the experimental base wasn't in the forest, then her idea was probably correct. Xiaoqing took out some water and washed Air Dai's fingers carefully. Then, she took Air Dai's hand and walked back. On the way back, Xiaoqing ran into the ambush left by Guan Haishan, a group of superpowered people between level 3 and 4. They were all left in the forest forever. She estimated that in a few years, the trees here would grow even more luxuriantly. After all, she had fertilized this tree well today. After dealing with the group of paranormals, Xiaoqing and Air Dai returned to the base. They didn't alert anyone, and quietly appeared in the base, then went to Guan Haishan's place. Guan Haishan's residence was very big. It was like a small manor. There were many flowers and plants in the courtyard. It looked very interesting. Guan Haishan's temper was unpredictable. There was no one in his courtyard. Xiaoqing and Air Dai walked around and entered Guan Haishan's bedroom. Sure enough, there was a pot of fresh blood on his table. He probably relied on this thing to maintain the vitality of his skin. Other than that, there was nothing suspicious. Xiaoqing thought for a while and decided to check the other rooms. After walking around Guan Haishan's entire residence, Xiaoqing found something wrong. There was a study room where Guan Haishan lived. There were 2 rows of bookshelves in the study room. The bookshelves were filled with books that looked very profound. Xiaoqing randomly picked 2 books. They were all very new. Not to mention reading notes. They didn't even have any traces of being flipped through. Guan Haishan didn't like reading. If he didn't like reading, why would he specially build a study room and put 2 big shelves of books? It couldn't be because he wanted to show off, right? In such a remote base, who would he show off to? So there must be something wrong with this study room. Xiaoqing touched her chin and began to look around. She and Air Dai looked around. In the end, Xiaoqing found something behind the bookshelves. She suddenly felt a little embarrassed. She probably watched too many TV dramas. Her mind was full of traps, and she felt that the trap must be behind the bookshelves. Damn retard. Chapter 396. The wall behind the bookshelf looked normal, but if one looked closely, they would find that there were fine lines on the wall. The lines were in the shape of a rectangular door. If an ordinary person came in, they would definitely look for the bookshelf. After all, the bookshelf looked the most problematic, so they would overlook the more obvious wall. In fact, the person who set up this trap was quite smart. Xiaoqing pushed the bookshelf away and began to study the wall carefully. While she was studying, a crack suddenly appeared on the wall, and a door slowly opened. She could hear people chatting inside. Hey, Master Guan should be back soon, right? It shouldn't take long to deal with those 2 people. B. Is the virgin blood for Master Guan ready? Hurry up and supervise him. If Master Guan doesn't have fresh virgin blood to drink when he comes back, he will definitely lose his temper. Then 2 people came out. As soon as they came out, they were stunned because 2 people who shouldn't be here suddenly appeared in front of them. Xiaoqing and Air Dai were also stunned. They hadn't found a way to open the door yet, but someone had opened it for them. One of them was about to speak, but Air Dai covered his mouth. Xiaoqing didn't dare to let them make a sound. She quickly stepped forward and subdued the other person. Their abilities weren't high, so it was easy for them to subdue them. Xiaoqing covered the other person's mouth and dragged him to a corner. She asked in a low voice, "Is this the Mad Devil Mercenary Group's experimental base?" The person's eyes were filled with fear, But he kept his mouth shut and didn't say anything. Xiaoqing smiled and looked very gentle. You don't dare to say it? I'll give you two choices. Either you say it now, and I'll give you a quick death. Or you don't say it now, and I'll torture you to death. The person seemed to think of something, but he still kept his mouth shut and shook his head. Xiaoqing did not expect to be able to pry it out so easily. After all, the mad devil must be very tight-lipped. Therefore, she signaled for Dai to bring the other person over. Then, she used a vine instead of a palm to strangle the person's mouth to prevent him from making a sound. I'm actually quite a gentle person, but that's only limited to humans. When I'm facing animals, I'm not so kind, Xiaoqing said coldly. She used the military knife to open a small wound on the man's neck, the kind that only drops of blood would seep out. Then he stuffed some daughter seeds into it. Under her control, the daughter snuck into the man's skin and sprouted under his skin and above his muscles. Then small bumps could be seen on his skin. They were very clear. These small bumps grew bigger and bigger, and soon they burst open, revealing the tender green buds underneath. It wasn't just pain. There was also a bone-deep itch, as well as an indescribable fear. After all, anyone who saw grass growing on their body would be dominated by this sense of fear. He was in so much pain that he wanted to scream and go crazy, but he couldn't make a sound. He could only bite the vine in his mouth, and then the thorns on the vine pierced his lips and tongue. He won't die. Xiaoqing looked at the other person and smiled. All the seeds have taken root under his skin and can't extend to his internal organs, so he won't die. Say if I throw him into a dark corner and let those cute little buds grow in his body, he won't be able to scream or move. He can only lie in that dark corner and feel those little cuties grow happily under his skin until he starves to death or is sucked dry by those little cuties. Then when he's discovered, he'll be like a living potted plant. Doesn't that sound interesting? Chapter 397. The remaining person was trembling. If not for Dai holding him up, he would probably have knelt on the ground. Xiaoqing patted his face and chuckled. I'll know whether or not it's a laboratory once I go in. Why do I need to ask you? He looked at his companion, and after a while he rolled his eyes. A foul stench came from his body. Xiaoqing looked down and saw that his legs were gradually stained with water, and then there was a yellow liquid dripping down. He was so scared that he peed himself. Xiaoqing took a step back in disgust and kicked the person on the ground to a corner. Let him fend for himself. The remaining person kept making a pitiful nasal sound. Xiaoqing whispered, What do you want to say to me? Dai let go of his mouth and quickly said, This is indeed the experimental base of the demonic mercenary group. There are many forks in the road, and many of them lead to traps. I'll bring you in. Very good. Xiaoqing liked his understanding of the situation. She immediately asked Dai to take him to a corner and take off his pants. She even used the clean fabric of his pants to wipe a certain unspeakable part of his body. In the end, Dai threw away the dirty pants and threw him a pair of underwear. Then Xiaoqing said, Lead the way. The captive who was holding a pair of underwear was speechless. Xiaoqing kicked his butt. Hurry up and lead the way. He obediently put on his underwear and led the way with his hairy legs bare. Before leading the way, Xiaoqing cut his wrist and planted two daughter in it. Then she made things very clear. Lead the way obediently, and I'll give you a quick death. If you play any tricks, I'll make you wish you were dead. The captive originally had some tricks in his mind, but now, he was completely obedient. He led the way through the door. After the three of them went in, the door behind them slowly closed. There were lights on both sides of the wall. The light was very soft, and the eyes were not closed. The three of them began to walk in unhurriedly. After walking for a long time, they reached the first fork in the road. The leader said honestly, Of these two roads, one is the right one, leading to the laboratory. The other is a dead end, leading to a trap. Follow me. Then, he led Xiaoqing and the others to the left side of the road. Along the way, they encountered a total of 6 forks. There were also many places with traps. If they took the wrong path, they would trigger the traps. When Xiaoqing walked forward, she calculated the direction and distance. When they reached the last intersection and got on the elevator, Xiaoqing suddenly realized that although they were underground, they had already left the base. If her calculations were correct, they should be in that small forest, which was also near the pond. Of course, it was underground. Guan Haishan was really astute. On the first day, he led them to the pond. Xiaoqing did not suspect anything else. No wonder it was said that the most dangerous place was the safest place. The ancients really did not lie. When they came out of the elevator, Xiaoqing found that the space was very spacious. There were lights on the ceiling, illuminating the entire underground space as if it was daytime. There were many people wearing white coats and masks walking around. Other than the middle passage, there were rows of rooms on both sides. Some of the rooms had their doors open, while others had their doors closed. Once they came down, Xiaoqing followed the agreement and gave the captive a quick death. Then, she threw the corpse in a corner and sneaked into the laboratory. The way to sneak in was to kill 2 researchers, change into a white coat, put on a mask, and look around from afar. Chapter 398. The more she looked, the angrier Xiaoqing became. Some rooms were filled with test subjects in transparent glass containers filled with strange liquids, and the test subjects were in the liquids. She saw test subjects whose lower bodies had been cut off and replaced with animal tails. She also saw superpowered people who had turned into zombies. There were also babies curled up in their disemboweled stomachs and their mothers. Those test subjects had failed and hadn't been destroyed, or they still had some value, so they were all displayed in the rooms. There were also living people in the rooms. They were all wearing the same uniform like patients, and each of them had a serial number on their chest. Those were the people who were about to become test subjects. Xiaoqing walked into many rooms, and her heart was burning with anger. The most terrible thing was that in one of the rooms, such an experiment was still being carried out. Living people were locked in a sealed room, and then the chemical weapons they had developed were thrown into the room. Xiaoqing saw with her own eyes that several people gradually turned into zombies in the poisonous fog, and finally turned into terrifying monsters that looked like zombies, but also a little bit like animals. However, this kind of chemical poisonous fog didn't seem to have been completely developed, because those who had turned into monsters were all dead. She couldn't suppress her anger anymore, and her long nails were already reaching out. At that moment, a man in a white coat hurried over and grabbed Xiaoqing. "Where did you 2 go? The experiment is at the most critical moment. Why are you running around?" Then Xiaoqing was dragged away, and Dai hurriedly followed. The 2 of them arrived at a room that was twice as big as the other rooms. There were many white coats in the room, and many things were placed on both sides of the room. There were all kinds of drugs and cold tools. In the middle of the room, there was a table that looked like an operation table, and a woman was tied to the table. The woman's belly was bulging, and it seemed that she had been pregnant for 7 or 8 months. At that moment, several people in white coats were surrounding the woman, as if they were doing a cesarean section. One of them said, "The mother's condition is normal, the transformation is not complete, and the life signs are gradually decreasing." Another person was taking notes in a small notebook. "Next, we'll start injecting SX93. Another person in a white coat who looked like the leader said. Immediately, someone came over with a syringe. The syringe was filled with green liquid, and he shot it all into the pregnant woman's neck. After about a minute or 2, the unconscious pregnant woman on the stage suddenly screamed. Blue veins appeared on her face, neck and body. Her eyes were wide open, and her facial features were somewhat distorted. After screaming for a few seconds, he stopped breathing. The leader hurriedly said, "Quick! Take out test subject number 1398. The rest of the people hurriedly cut open the pregnant woman's stomach. However, as soon as they cut open the pregnant woman's stomach, a small white and tender hand reached out from the pregnant woman's stomach. Quite a few people were a little surprised, but they had seen the world, so they let down their guard. The next second, a wet baby came out. The baby came out with its eyes open, and it looked slightly bigger than a normal baby. More importantly, it had a very strange smile on its face. As soon as it came out, it pounced on the face of a man in a white coat like lightning. Then there was a series of screams, because it gnawed the man's face alive. Soon, several high-level paranormals rushed in and quickly caught the strange baby. However, the man in the white coat had been gnawed beyond recognition, and black liquid kept dripping from his wound. Chapter 399. The leader expressionlessly took out a gun from his arms and ended the life of the man in the white coat. The leader waved his hand and said, "Keep the number 1398 test subject for the time being. This is the only semi-successful test subject we have after the number 068 test subject. Take good care of it. There must be no problems." Xiaoqing's eyes were cold. She quietly took out her mobile phone and took a lot of photos to save them. Then, she left the laboratory and began to look for the power control room. She wanted to destroy this place. This dirty hell-like place. As for those poor test subjects, she could no longer save them, because she found that all the test subjects had been injected with mutated drugs. They were no longer human. Instead of letting them watch in pain as they turned into monsters, it was better to let them disappear with this evil place. However, Xiaoqing was not ready to completely destroy this place, because this was also a piece of evidence. She wanted the whole world to see the disgusting face of the demonic mercenary group. Xiaoqing sneaked into the power control room with Air Dai. She touched Air Dai's head and asked gently, "Are you afraid?" Air Dai shook his head seriously. Xiaoqing smiled and took out a lighter. She calmly found a barrel of oil and poured it all on the surrounding machines. Then she ignited it. After that, she pulled Air Dai and rushed out quickly. She found a corner, and then vines stretched out layer by layer, tightly wrapping her and Air Dai in the middle. Layer by layer, layer by layer. There was no gap between her and Air Dai. The man's body and the woman's body were perfectly attached to each other. When the vines turned into a big ball, a terrible explosion suddenly sounded. At that moment, Xiaoqing felt that she had lost her hearing. Her head was buzzing and blank. Even with the protection of the layers of vines, her chest was still hurt by the shock wave. After a long time, Xiaoqing felt better. This meant that she could hear. Xiaoqing removed the vines and found that her poor vines had been blown to pieces. At least 1 meter of the 2-meter-thick wall of vines was completely broken. Of course, this did not show how terrible the explosion was. What was more terrible was that she saw the sun. The laboratory was originally underground, but this time, the explosion forcibly blasted through the soil layer above, exposing the entire base to the sunlight. Xiaoqing walked in the laboratory expressionlessly. If she met a man in a white coat who was not dead, she would kill him. If she met a poor test subject who had mutated, she would kill him. After she and Air Dai searched, there were no other living people in the laboratory except for them. At this time, the people in the base should have heard the noise and were rushing here. Xiaoqing calmly shot out vines and used them as ropes to pull her and Air Dai out. As they crawled out, Xiaoqing said seriously, "Don't leave anyone alive, understand?" Air Dai nodded seriously. After they crawled out of the pit, many people appeared in front of them. They were all from the base. Their jaws almost hit the ground. Everyone looked at Xiaoqing with disbelief and fear. Then the massacre came. 2 killing machines that did not feel pain and did not know fatigue rushed into the crowd. They were like 2 lions rushing into a flock of sheep. It was a one-sided massacre. No one could resist at all. At most, they would struggle a few times before they turned into corpses on the ground spurting blood. Xiaoqing took dummy with her and killed all the way into the base. She hated those crazy beasts in the base. She couldn't wait to cut them all up and feed them to the dogs. Oh, the dogs would definitely not eat them. At first, a group of people surrounded Xiaoqing and Air Dai. Later, they were scared out of their wits and were chased by Xiaoqing and Air Dai. She took Air Dai and killed them all the way. Wherever they went, the ground was soaked with blood. Especially after they entered the base, the square where the battle took place. Blood soaked the soles of their shoes. None of the paranormals in the base could escape. Even if there were one or two paranormals who ran away, Xiaoqing tore space to chase after them and killed them. Xiaoqing really hated this group of people. She even used the cruelest way to kill them. She dismembered them, crushed them, or swallowed them by the man-eating flowers. Even so, it still could not alleviate her hatred for them. Especially after seeing the soul-stirring scenes in the laboratory, she couldn't bear to let this group of people die. She really wanted to torture them, make them wish they were dead, and make them unable to get up even if they wanted to. After killing all the paranormals in the base, Xiaoqing and Air Dai searched several times and found a few people who were hiding. Finally, they found the place where those poor people were locked up. There were only a few girls. As for the children, there were only 2 left. They were lying on the chopping board in the kitchen with their stomachs cut open. For this reason, she specially treated the 2 chefs well. She didn't do anything but cut the meat off their bodies piece by piece and stuffed it into their mouths. In order to give them the best treatment, Xiaoqing specially dipped some soy sauce. Look, she was so kind. As soon as Yin Chiyue returned to the capital, she immediately contacted Old Master Qin. Old Master Qin didn't say anything. He directly mobilized the army and took control of the entire Mad Devil mercenary group. At the same time, he led the strongest paranormals of the Qin family and quickly rushed to the nameless base. They didn't rush there like Xiaoqing and the others. It was as if they were traveling. They could travel for 3 days in a day. They rushed there in a hurry. When the group of people rushed there, they saw Xiaoqing, Air Dai, and a few pale and weak girls sitting in front of a big pit. The strong smell of blood was already a little stinky. Chapter 400. The thick smell of blood came from the pit and the entrance of the base not far away. 2 rows of corpses were neatly stacked at the entrance of the base. Beside them were some broken limbs that couldn't be pieced together to form a complete corpse. The scene looked like hell. The flying flies landed on the corpses densely packed. Even the ability users who were used to seeing all kinds of cruel scenes, since the apocalypse, couldn't help but feel a little nauseous. So when they saw Xiaoqing and the others, their gazes were a little strange. Xiaoqing didn't care. She stood up and greeted Old Master Qin, then said, "This is the private laboratory of the demonic mercenary group. Although it was blown up quite badly, most of the evidence is still here." As soon as she said that, those people pricked up their ears. Xiaoqing took the lead and led them to the laboratory that had already been blown open. They looked at the failed test subjects that had not been completely destroyed, as well as the experimental records that Xiaoqing had left behind in advance. Those people who originally looked at her like she was looking at a demon now wished they could rush up and whip those corpses. "You're insane. That's insane." Old Master Qin was so angry that his beard was trembling. He said fiercely, "If the demonic mercenary group doesn't get rid of them, the heavens won't tolerate it. I think the demonic mercenary group must have received the news by now. At the very least, they must have sensed that something is wrong. We must rush back as fast as possible," Xiaoqing said calmly. She was afraid that if they went back late, Wu Buping, that scoundrel, would abscond with his people. At that time, it would be difficult to find him. "I'll take everyone back first. The rest of you can walk slowly," Qin Zishi, who had just returned from a mission, volunteered. His wolves and bears were the fastest means of transportation. Old Master Qin nodded. Then, regardless of his old body, he wanted to be the first to go back. However, after thinking about it, Xiaoqing was the first to agree. Firstly, Old Master Qin was the highest boss of the Qin family. It could be said that he had the highest authority in the Qin family. This matter involved a lot of things. Not only did it involve the demonic frenzy mercenary group, but also the people behind the demonic frenzy mercenary group. With Old Master Qin overseeing the Qin family, it would make people feel more at ease. Secondly, being with them was actually much safer than being with that group of metahumans. Xiaoqing was very worried that the demonic mercenary group would counterattack before their deaths and send people to intercept them. Therefore, the first group to go back was Xiaoqing, Air Dai, Yin Chiyue, Qin Zishi and Old Master Qin. Each of the three brothers of the wolf family carried an air dye, and Xiong also carried an air dye. She didn't need any mounts at all and ran faster than the wolves. He could even go to the front to pick a flower, and then come back to give it to Xiaoqing. It was a kind of air dye romance. The journey was very smooth. They didn't meet anyone intercepting them all the way to the capital. When Xiaoqing and the others returned to the Qin family, they found out that Father Qin was very awesome. Although he didn't trust Xiaoqing very much, he trusted Old Master Qin very much. Therefore, when Old Master Qin brought people to help Xiaoqing, he sent people to monitor the demonic frenzy mercenary group. Just 2 days ago, the demonic frenzy mercenary group suddenly made a move. Father Qin didn't say anything and directly grounded the entire demonic frenzy mercenary group. At that time, Wu Buping found another powerful family in the capital, the Li family, to complain. The Li family was also very powerful, but they were still a little inferior to the Qin family, especially in terms of martial strength. The Li family sent people to question Father Qin, why he imprisoned the demonic frenzy mercenary group. Father Qin didn't even meet them, and didn't give a reason. He only said 2 words, wait. No matter how angry the Li family was, they didn't dare to vent their anger on Father Qin, because in the capital, who didn't know that the Qin family was like firecrackers? They would explode at the slightest touch. Chapter 401. Moreover, they didn't give face to anyone. Their tempers were explosive, especially Old Master Qin. Not many people dared to glare at him. If the Li family dared to say anything, the Qin family would really dare to barge in and beat them up. Even if the Li family was only slightly weaker than the Qin family, they didn't dare to provoke the Qin family. After all, no one wanted to provoke a bomb that might explode at any time, right? Especially Father Qin, who had a background in strength and wasn't afraid. On the other side, the smile on Wu Buping's face all year long had disappeared. His eyes were gloomy as he paced back and forth. After a while, a young man who looked similar to Guan Haishan walked in. This person was Guan Haishan's younger brother, Guan Hailong. He was also one of Wu Buping's right-hand men. As soon as Guan Hailong walked in, Wu Buping asked anxiously, "What did the Li family say?" Guan Hailong's eyes were also very gloomy. The Li family sent word that the Qin family can't handle this matter. They asked us to wait and not be anxious. Fuck them. Wu Buping was so angry that he kicked the table over. At that time, it was the Li family who asked them to cooperate. The Li family was the one who enjoyed the fruits of their labor. Now that something had happened, the Li family was the first to abandon them. After calming down a little, Wu Buping asked faintly, "Is Haishan back?" Guan Hailong shook his head and said, "No, and we're now locked up. We can't send news out, and news from the outside can't be sent in. No one knows what's going on now." Although they couldn't do anything before, they could still contact the Li family. Now they couldn't even contact the Li family. Wu Buping wasn't worried about Guan Haishan. After all, Guan Haishan had an immortal body. He frowned and said, "In the worst-case scenario, our laboratory has been discovered. If that's the case, then we're really finished. As long as our laboratory is exposed, the Li family will definitely be the first to cut ties with us. In order to clear their names, they'll be the first to think of ways to silence us. If the laboratory wasn't discovered," he paused and sneered, "the Qin family wouldn't have locked us up. They were already at the end of the road." Guan Hailong whispered, "Big brother, what should we do?" "In a while, pass down the news and prepare to start Plan M. If the Li family is really so ruthless." A trace of madness flashed in Wu Buping's eyes. "Then even if I die, I will drag the entire capital down with me." Guan Hailong lowered his head with some trepidation, but his eyes were filled with madness and determination. "I understand, big brother." After Guan Hailong left, Wu Buping picked up a potion and looked at it calmly for a long time. Then he slowly injected it into his body. He had always been a lunatic. On the afternoon of Xiaoqing's return to the capital, the Qin family announced a piece of news regarding the demonic fury mercenary group's 10 major crimes. Ranked at the top was the construction of a living laboratory to research the zombie virus. As soon as this news was announced, the entire capital was in an uproar. Many ordinary people had been bullied by the demonic mercenary group, and there were also many ability users who couldn't stand the demonic mercenary group. However, they never thought that the demonic mercenary group would do such a crazy thing. The evidence was posted one photo after another. Those who had not seen the scene gritted their teeth and wanted to tear the demonic fury mercenary group apart alive. After the anger, there was lingering fear. Fortunately, the demonic fury mercenary group was discovered. Otherwise, what else would they do? Chapter 402. Who knew they might be the next experimental subjects? Therefore, everyone in the capital supported the Qin family's decision to kill the entire demonic mercenary group. The head of the capital also gave the order to cooperate with the Qin family to carry out the operation. At the same time, the Li family and the major mercenary groups also participated in this operation. Of course, this killing didn't mean killing everyone in the demonic mercenary group. After all, not everyone was bad. There were definitely many low-level people who didn't know what the demonic mercenary group was doing. Therefore, the Qin family's decision was to kill the higher-ups of the demonic mercenary group. They would rather kill the wrong people than let them go. As for the middle and low-level people, they would first capture them and then slowly investigate. However, when they arrived at the demonic mercenary group's encampment, they saw corpses all over the ground. Moreover, they had mutated and zombified corpses with their stomachs cut open. Then some of the still-alive monsters who didn't know whether to call them humans or zombies rushed out of the house. Wu Booping held a tube of medicine and stood in the group of monsters with a faint smile on his face. Let the entire capital be buried with me. He opened the medicine in his hand. The moment the liquid inside came into contact with the air, it quickly evaporated and turned into a light green gas. Some of the ability users standing at the front suddenly felt that something was wrong. As he muttered, he scratched his itchy skin. Then he screamed because he saw that he had scratched off a piece of flesh. He was stunned, but the people around him looked at him in horror. He lowered his head and saw that his fingernails were slowly growing, turning into a familiar grayish-black color. The skin on his hands also instantly spread a greenish-black color that symbolized death. It was very similar to the zombies he had killed countless times. He trembled as he touched his face. With a slight scratch, he scratched off a piece of flesh. The edges of the flesh were already rotten. No, impossible. How could he become such a monster? The man's eyes were filled with despair. His hand trembled more and more. In the end, he pulled out a dagger and stabbed it into his heart. He would rather die than become a man-eating monster. There was more than one person who was infected. Those who were closer were all infected. The rest of the people retreated in horror from the green fog. They couldn't believe it. How could ability users be infected? If even paranormals were infected, then the fear in everyone's heart was infinitely magnified. Xiaoqing coldly looked at Wu Booping, who was standing in the green fog and laughing arrogantly, and said coldly, "This should be a virus that they have successfully developed. Everyone step back and don't get infected. Otherwise, even superpowered people will turn into zombies." Some of the infected people stood there in a daze, some knelt on the ground and cried, and some decisively ended their lives in despair. Xiaoqing frowned. She didn't know what to do, because the green fog was still spreading. At this rate, it would probably cover the entire capital by tomorrow night. General Qin, in this situation, it's not good to have too many people. Please take everyone to disperse everyone in the capital. Let everyone go out of the city first. We'll move back after we've solved the virus, Xiaoqing said decisively. All right. Father Qin nodded and left with a group of people. Those who stayed were all experts, such as Wu Jiaojiao from Thorns and Roses, Zhu Machen, and Jean Mingyu from Frost. Xiaoqing waved her hand. Gu Chuan stepped forward and tried to condense the water vapor in the air to freeze the green fog. He found that with his strength, he could only freeze a palm-sized area. However, the frozen area was still melting quickly. Chapter 403. Gu Chuan shook his head. His ice power couldn't deal with this strange virus. Wu Buping was slowly walking out. His face was full of malice. Even I can't control this virus. Give up. Even if I die, you'll die with me. Behind him, many babies crawled on the ground. Each of them had a part of their body that was zombified. They were all finished products or semi-finished products from previous experiments. Now they were all released by him. Go, he said fiercely. Then the babies jumped on him. Each of them bit his body angrily. He kept waving his hands, trying to get rid of the babies. He also made frightened sounds. Xiaoqing rolled up her sleeves and looked at him expressionlessly. What was the saying? Cleverness overcomes cleverness? Reap what you sow. Wu Buping had a lot of flesh bitten off, but it would slowly grow back. He had injected himself with the virus. Xiaoqing looked carefully. She felt that the babies couldn't kill Wu Buping in a short time. At this time, a little girl walked out of the green fog. She was wearing a loose hospital gown. She had a pair of big, innocent eyes. She appeared beside Wu Buping and slowly reached out her hand. Even if she stood on her tiptoes, she could only reach Wu Buping's chest. The girl frowned. Then, she put her hand into Wu Buping's body. She grabbed his heart and pulled. Wu Buping was so scared that he bent over. Finally, she twisted Wu Buping's neck happily. She tore off Wu Buping's head and held it in her hand. Then she danced like she was holding a favorite toy. The babies who had eaten Wu Buping's body surrounded her and lay on the ground obediently. The people who saw this scene couldn't help but shudder, even if they hated Wu Buping. Xiaoqing knew very well that this girl was probably one of Wu Buping's experimental subjects. She was probably the only one who had succeeded in the legend. Wu Buping thought that he could control these experimental subjects, but in the end, he was bitten by them. However, what Xiaoqing and the others were most worried about was not the experimentals, but the drifting mist. It was constantly spreading like an infectious disease, dyeing the nearby mist green. The little girl opened her mouth and looked at Xiaoqing and the others with a gaze full of malice. She was like a hungry tiger that had been released from a cage, looking at everything with malice and greed. Xiaoqing took a deep breath and said calmly, "Although our biggest worry is this fog, the most important thing is to deal with these zombies. If they escape, the consequences will be unimaginable." But, Wu Jiaojia frowned. "There's no way for us to enter the fog. Maybe I can give it a try." Xiaoqing's confidence naturally came from her body. She was not a human being. Even if she turned into a zombie, to what extent could she turn into a zombie? She stretched out a vine and then slowly probed into the fog. On the surface, only one vine was probing into the fog, but Xiaoqing was secretly manipulating the vine to absorb the fog into her body along with the vine. To her surprise, the fog not only didn't cause any harm to her, but also turned into a special kind of energy the moment it entered her body. This special kind of energy changed her body, while strengthening her superpower. In just a short while, Xiaoqing felt that she was about to break through a small level. Chapter 404. I'm a wood-powered paranormal. I have a plant that looks like a jellyfish. When it's released, it wraps me in the middle and isolates me from all the poisonous gas. Xiaoqing spouted nonsense with a straight face. I want to try and see if I can isolate this kind of fog as well. Be careful. Gu Panpan, who knew Xiaoqing well, said seriously. Xiaoqing deliberately stretched out her hand in front of everyone. She put her hand into the fog. After a long time, nothing happened. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief, looking at Xiaoqing's gaze, as if they were looking at their savior. Xiaoqing continued to talk nonsense seriously. With my current strength, I can only protect one person like me from this kind of fog. So, except for me and Air Dai, you all go out. Judging by the speed of the fog, the whole yard will be covered soon. You all wait for us outside." They looked at each other, nodded and went out. Xiaoqing, who had fooled everyone, went into the fog with Air Dai. When she went in, she told Air Dai to see if he could absorb the fog to strengthen himself. Then, the two of them went in happily. The girl didn't expect that Xiaoqing could come in. She was planning to eat that person first. Xiaoqing and Air Dai came in. The girl let out a shrill roar. And the babies were the first to pounce on her. Actually, they were all innocent. Before they were born, their chance to live had been taken away by someone else, and they had been transformed into such monsters. But Xiaoqing had no choice but to kill them, because if she didn't kill them, more people would die in their hands in the future. Don't forget, these baby-like zombies can't control their desires, they can eat people. So Xiaoqing and Air Dai didn't show any mercy when they attacked. These baby zombies were not weak. The weakest one was at the peak of level 3, and the strongest one was at level 4. However, they were useless in front of Xiaoqing. Soon, Xiaoqing and Air Dai killed more than half of them. The little girl zombie saw that the situation was not good, so she rushed over immediately. She was probably a paranormal when she was alive, and her power was strange. She could mist her body quickly. When she turned into a cloud of mist, her speed would become very fast. Then, she would condense into a solid body and appear in front of Xiaoqing. When she was fatally injured, she would turn into a cloud of mist again. In this way, Xiaoqing couldn't hurt her at all. Xiaoqing and the little girl zombie fought for a long time. When all the baby zombies were killed, they still couldn't defeat the little girl zombie. She wasn't as strong as Xiaoqing, but her power was too strange. Zombies had a strong recovery ability, so Xiaoqing couldn't do anything to her in a short time. Seeing that the fog had already spread out, Xiaoqing was a little anxious. She suddenly attacked, temporarily freezing the space around the little girl, and then attacked the little girl. She almost destroyed half of the little girl's body. The little girl became crazy. She suddenly turned into a cloud of red mist and rushed to Xiaoqing. The whole cloud of red mist had a sense of madness. Air Dai seemed to have found something. She quickly threw herself at Xiaoqing. Then, with a loud sound, the cloud of red mist exploded when it touched Air Dai. The power of the explosion was very strong. The little girl, who only had a small half of her body left, took the opportunity to run away. When the power of the explosion calmed down a little, Xiaoqing immediately stood up and held Air Dai in her arms. She eagerly checked Air Dai's body. Air Dai's back had no flesh at the moment. She could even see his spine and the internal organs inside. What was more terrible was that Air Dai didn't recover. If it was in the past, his wounds would definitely heal slowly. But this time, Xiaoqing checked for a long time, but the wounds didn't heal by themselves. Xiaoqing was so distressed. She didn't have time to absorb the mist. She found a piece of clothing from the space and wrapped it around Air Dai. Then, she ran out with Air Dai in her arms. She was so fast that the people waiting outside only felt a gust of wind in front of their eyes. Then she disappeared. Xiaoqing only left a sentence: one escaped. In fact, it was killed. Everyone was speechless. Chapter 405. Xiaoqing didn't have time to say more. She hugged the Air Dai and ran back to her house. There was an indescribable fear in her heart. In the past, even if she or the Air Dai were injured, Xiaoqing didn't have this kind of feeling. Because they were zombies, unless it was a fatal injury like cutting off their heads, normal injuries would heal very quickly. But this time, the Air Dai didn't show any signs of healing. Xiaoqing was very scared. She was so scared that her heart was flustered. She was so scared that her legs went soft. She was so scared that her heart was in a mess. When she rushed home, Fujingma was watering the flowers. When he saw Xiaoqing rushing in with the Air Dai, he was shocked. "Sister Qing, what's wrong?" "Nothing. Watch the door." Xiaoqing hugged the Air Dai and rushed upstairs expressionlessly, probably because he was more relaxed after entering his own house. Fujingma accidentally saw the Air Dai's back that wasn't covered by clothes. It was a shocking sight. Fujingma was stunned. He stood there in a daze for a long time before he chuckled. There was an indescribable madness in his eyes. He was wondering how Fu Jingxian could be safe and sound, and had only lost his memory. It turned out that Fu Jingxian was no longer human. He held the kettle in his hand. His eyes were filled with uncontrollable jealousy. Fu Jingxian, oh Fu Jingxian. When he was alive, he took everything from him. Now that he was dead, he still wanted to fight with him. He couldn't accept it. Why did all the good things belong to Fu Jingxian? Why did everyone like Fu Jingxian? Why did Fu Jingxian not have to do anything to get the things that he couldn't get no matter how much effort he put in? Why? He and Fu Jingxian had the same face, but Xiaoqing would rather like a zombie than look at him. Fu Jingma's eyes gradually turned from crazy jealousy to cold and bloodthirsty. A zombie? He wasn't even a human. What did he have to fight with him? Fu Jingxian, you should have died long ago. So this time, you should die quietly. Whatever you have, I will take over for you. Xiaoqing carried Air Dai to the second floor and carefully put him on the bed. She removed his coat, but the shocking wound still showed no signs of recovery. Xiaoqing observed carefully and discovered that his wounds were actually recovering. However, there was a special power that was destroying his wounds at the same time as they were recovering. Every time the wound healed a little, it would immediately be destroyed, so it looked like it hadn't healed at all. She was extremely anxious. When she turned around, she realized that Yin Qiyue and the others were not back yet. She rushed out like a gust of wind and carried Yin Qiyue back. Quick, take a look. What's wrong with him? Yin Qiyue was carried so hard that he couldn't breathe. He wanted to joke with Xiaoqing with a bitter smile, but he saw the huge wound on Air Dai's back. He didn't like Air Dai very much. He was jealous that Air Dai had Xiaoqing's heart. Sometimes he would secretly complain about him. However, he never thought of letting Air Dai die because Xiaoqing would be sad. Moreover, Air Dai loved Xiaoqing very much. He was willing to protect Xiaoqing with his life. Yin Qiyue could see that. Therefore, even if he was crazy with jealousy, Yin Qiyue didn't do anything to Air Dai. On the contrary, when he saw Air Dai's serious injury, his first reaction was to think about how to help Air Dai. After Xiaoqing told Yin Qiyue about her discovery, Yin Qiyue gritted his teeth and said, I need some time to do research because I'm not sure what the power in his wounds is. Xiaoqing nodded and said, just do your research. Air Dai should be able to hold on for a while. Chapter 406. Yin Qiyue nodded and began to move her tools. Xiaoqing was very anxious. She suddenly felt like smoking, so she walked out of the door and lit a cigarette. It was as if this could ease her anxiety. Yan Hanqing and the others came back one after another. Seeing Xiaoqing like this, they knew that something must have happened. Gu Panpan was the representative and asked Xiaoqing, how is it? The injury is very serious, and there is no way to recover. Qiyue is thinking of a way. Xiaoqing took a puff and put out the cigarette. She asked in a low voice, how is the fog? It is still spreading. Old Master Qin has already sent people to evacuate the residents in the city. Currently, everyone is moving out of the city. The Prime Minister sent researchers to take some of the fog back for research. We don't know the results yet. Yan Hanqing said in a low voice. Let's go back and rest first. The fog won't spread for a while. Xiaoqing forced a smile and said, Hanqing, wait for a while. The others looked at each other and left. Only Yan Hanqing was left. Xiaoqing put out the cigarette, but the remaining half was still between her fingers. She twirled the cigarette and said, I have a bad feeling. Hanqing, if something happens in the future and I am not by your side, go directly to Jiang City. I believe that there are more zombies. Although they are no longer human, they are more trustworthy than humans. It won't happen. Yan Hanqing grabbed Xiaoqing's hand. After holding it, he felt that he was too impulsive. However, he couldn't bear to let go of that warm and soft hand. Listen to me. I'm not saying that something bad will definitely happen in the future, but it's better to be safe than sorry. After all, this is a very good escape route. Yinyi is a good person, she said in a low voice. People should always think more. Yan Hanqing silently agreed. Xiaoqing continued. In this post-apocalyptic world, no one can say for sure how long they can live. I'm always worried that if one day something really happens, my son will be entrusted to you. Yan Hanqing suppressed the bitterness in his heart and whispered, nothing will happen. In order to reassure Xiaoqing, he added, I will protect the baby. Then I'm relieved. You should also go and rest, Xiaoqing said. Yan Hanqing reluctantly let go of his hand and slowly left. After he left, Xiaoqing leaned against the windowsill and closed her eyes. She was exhausted. From the apocalypse until now, she had to shoulder the safety of everyone around her. Sometimes, she was so tired that she wanted to cry, but when she saw the gentle and happy eyes of the people around her, she would have the strength to grit her teeth and continue to bear it. Since a long time ago, her instructor had said that she was a person who liked to carry everything on her own. Living like this would be very difficult and tiring. If possible, Xiaoqing also hoped that there would be someone who could share the burden with her. However, most of the time, she would not think too much. She would only grit her teeth and walk forward, opening a path for Dai and the others. At this time, she understood Yan Qiue's masochistic tendencies. When she was very tired and bitter, her temper would become very bad. However, she would not vent her anger on the people around her. If she held it in for too long, she would become a pervert. No wonder Yan Qiue always said that the two of them were a match made in heaven. Thinking about it this way, it was indeed true. Xiaoqing thought about a lot of things. In the end, she decided to go out for a walk. She went to the place where the fog was spreading and tried to absorb the fog. This kind of fog could indeed be absorbed and was very beneficial to her. However, her absorption speed was not as fast as the speed of the fog spreading. Secondly, she could not expose this fact. After absorbing for a while, Xiaoqing had a flash of inspiration and summoned out her family's Meng Meng's little vine. Just as she expected, once the vine plunged into the fog, it began to absorb the fog. Several vines were like several transportation pipes, unceasingly transporting the fog into her body, and the speed was indeed much faster. Chapter 407. After absorbing for a while, she stopped. She couldn't absorb it secretly like this. She had to find an opportunity to let everyone know that she had a way to deal with the fog. Then she would deal with it openly. Otherwise, it would be very disadvantageous for her if she was discovered. After looking at the fog, Xiaoqing went out of the city again. Along the way, she saw many people moving out. They were moving all their valuables and belongings out. Many tents had been set up in the open space outside the capital. Those people were temporarily living in these tents. If the fog could be dealt with before it spread out of the city, they could move back directly. If the fog couldn't be dealt with before it spread out of the city, they would have to move further away. Everyone looked worried. After all, they had settled down, and no one wanted to be homeless again. Moreover, according to the researchers, if there was no way to suppress the fog, it could even spread to the whole world. As long as there was enough time, this possibility was very high. The first to be completely submerged would definitely be China. This was because the fog contained a kind of devouring virus. It could assimilate the air, and then spread out continuously. Father Qin was leading people to settle down the ordinary people, who had just left the city. Qin Zishi was also leading a small team of guards to patrol around. Then Xiaoqing met the number 1 chief for the first time. The chief looked to be in his 40s. His eyebrows were very gentle and had a scholarly air. However, Xiaoqing knew that no one who could sit in this position was simple. Especially after Doomsday, they could still hold their position. He seemed to want to get to know Xiaoqing. Xiaoqing was worried about Dai, so she went back after chatting for a while. The next day, Old Master Qin sent a message. The group of old fellows in the research institute had studied it all night. The final conclusion was that it couldn't be suppressed. This was because they couldn't find anything that could restrain the fog. No wonder Wu Buping said before he died that he wanted the whole world to be buried with him. Presumably, there was no antidote for this virus since it was developed. That was why Wu Buping didn't dare to use it until he was about to die. Yin Qiyu hadn't come out yet. He only had a bowl of porridge halfway through. When he came out, his eyes were dark. As he ate the porridge, he was calculating something. After finishing the porridge at the door, he plunged into the room again. Xiaoqing couldn't help at all. She felt more and more annoyed. At this time, she realized that her relationship with Air Dai was not as simple as family. She liked Air Dai and Yin Qiyu. Once she admitted it, Xiaoqing felt inexplicably relieved. In fact, she had always known it, but she just didn't dare to admit it. Xiaoqing really wanted to laugh at herself for being so timid. Then she felt at a loss. What about the future? She knew Yin Qiyu's character. As long as she wanted him to do something, even if she wanted him to die immediately, he would do it immediately. If she said that she was willing to accept Yin Qiyu, even if it was just bringing an Air Dai with her, Yin Qiyu would go crazy with joy. She always knew this. But what about Air Dai? He had no memory and didn't know anything. He just loved her instinctively. What would happen after he regained his memory? Xiaoqing thought about it for a long time and decided to put this matter aside for the time being. When Air Dai regained his memory, she would ask Air Dai if he was willing to live with her and Yin Qiyu. If Air Dai wasn't willing, she would let go even if she couldn't bear to. If Air Dai was willing, then he shouldn't blame her for being selfish for keeping both men. Chapter 408. As for what the world would think of her, was that important? She was living for herself, and for the people she cared about. After thinking through this, Xiaoqing felt much more relaxed. She had taken her revenge. All that was left was Fu Jinling, who didn't know what was good for her. If she met her in the future, she could just kill her. Everyone in her family had the ability to protect themselves. Even if something happened to her one day, they would still be able to live well. She didn't need to worry about this anymore. She also thought through the matter between Air Dai and Yin Qiyu. She felt that her life was almost complete. After dragging it on for another day, Xiaoqing felt that she couldn't drag it on any longer. Then, she went to look for the bureau chief, and went straight to the point. I have a way to suppress the fog. As for whether I can get rid of the fog, I'm not sure. The bureau chief asked very seriously, will it harm you? Xiaoqing shook her head, and continued to make up nonsense. I'm not sure either. But I have a kind of ability that was given to me by my plants. That is purification. I can absorb the fog into my plants, and then slowly purify it. Although the speed is a little slow, it's still faster than the speed at which the fog spreads. The bureau chief grabbed Xiaoqing's hand and said, I thank you on behalf of the entire country. If you find that it's harmful to your body, please stop. We will think of another way. Xiaoqing nodded and brought her small vines to absorb the fog. At the start, the bureau chief, Old Master Qin, and the rest were looking at her worriedly from not far away. Xiaoqing had to appear to be strenuous, serious, and cautious. She had to absorb the fog slowly and maintain a speed that was slightly faster than the speed at which the fog spread. When the fog had spread a little more, the bureau chief and the rest had all retreated. Only then did Xiaoqing speed up. Dozens of vines flew out and absorbed a pile of fog into her body in a matter of minutes, then converted it into her energy. Middle stage 5th level, late stage 5th level, peak stage 5th level. Very quickly, Xiaoqing felt that she was only one step away from 6th level. Before she broke through, absorbing the mist would be useless. Xiaoqing stored all the mist in her vines and body, waiting to absorb it after she broke through. After the mist accumulated, it formed small green beads that existed in the vines and her body. Xiaoqing worked day and night, and Yin Qiyu also researched day and night. In the end, they came to a conclusion that the reason why Air Dai couldn't recover was that there was a special kind of energy in his wound. This kind of energy was very destructive, and it kept destroying the newly healed wound. There were two ways to restore the Air Dai. The first was to find something that could restrain this energy and remove it. The second was to let the Air Dai break through. Chapter 409. First is my daughter's novel. She has millions of credits and is guaranteed to be a scammer. The National Supporting Female Ghost Catcher. Leisurely summary. She is an unknown extra in the entertainment industry. She goes to the set every day just to get food. She is the last heir of the Yin-Yang family. She failed to guide the soul and died. After her rebirth, she became the daughter of the Jiang group. She has a father who is obsessed with his daughter and 3 brothers who are obsessed with her sister. During the day, she would still be an extra in the set. At night, she would have sex with a ghost. Oh no, she would lead the ghost to the right path. She accidentally became famous as the evil female supporting lead. Advertisements and scripts came one after another. She accidentally formed fan clubs all over the country. People all over the country followed her. She was known as the National Supporting Female and received so many awards. She accidentally caused the film emperors and actresses to quarrel because of her. The film emperors and actresses were willing to play supporting roles for her. The directors fought to tailor a script for her. Her path to stardom was bright, but she still did not film at night. She only took on supporting roles. Her opponents slandered her and said she was acting like a big shot. Her fans collectively asked her to be the lead. The paparazzi chased her all over the city just for an answer. She just smiled. But, looking at the king of hell behind her, who was supposed to be cold and abstinent, she was confused. She just came out at night to catch a ghost. Why did he have an angry expression on his face that said, "How dare you cheat on me?" Then there is my heir Tun. She just finished a long novel. Needless to say, she is also very cute and easy to tease. The transmigration country Queen Shang. Refreshing heir Tun summary. Unfortunately, she just took a nap on the plane. When she opened her eyes again, she returned to the time before liberation. She went from being the female CEO of a multinational corporation with a net worth of billions to a down-and-out farmer's girl with old and young children. God, this joke is too big. Even if you want to lower your status, you can't lower it like this. Damn. Was it easy for her to be a female CEO? Mu Jinsi, who was used to countless storms, expressed that she could not accept such a huge change. Even if she was down and out like an ancient farmer's girl, she had to be the master and create a new kingdom of her own. First of all, she brainwashed her honest parents who were often bullied. She made them understand the truth of kind people being bullied and kind horses being ridden. Next was to teach the pedantic big brother bookworm, so that he would never return on the path of being a black-bellied person. Next was, did she really give birth to this little bun? Looking at the skinny and tanned bun hugging her thigh tightly, Mu Jinsi was momentarily confused. Forget it, it's just raising a bun. I guarantee that he'll be fat and white. Mu Jinsi went all out to accumulate wealth. She quickly became the richest person in the village, the richest person in the town, the richest person in the city, and the richest person in the country. Just when she felt that she had achieved her goal, wave after wave of relatives suddenly appeared. Even Steamed Bun's father appeared. Mini theater, Mu Jinsi. Just because you say it's yours, it's yours. Do you have any proof? If you're so capable, do a paternity test. Steamed Bun's father. It looks so much like me. If it's not mine, whose is it? Mu Jinsi replied, the world is full of wonders. It's not strange for people to look alike. Steamed Bun's father. In that case, I have a better way to prove it. What? He sounded suspicious. Let's have another one and compare them. Then we'll know. Fuck off. Finally, it was Meng Meng Qing Qing, Huang Rua Meng. When Yin Yin Yin. You can tease her as you wish. The Seductive Wife of Marriage, Stop Fooling Around, by Wen Yin Shui Qing. Introduction. Beautiful, sexy, and seductive. She is a third-rate supporting actress in front of the big screen. In the TV series, she is known as the mistress, lover, and bad woman. She is a vixen in the eyes of the audience. He is the CEO of the Imperial Entertainment Group, the youngest billionaire on the Forbes list. He is cold, noble, and powerful. He controls the economic lifeline of the city of Brisk. He is cold and emotionless, but he loves her to the bone. One day, bodyguard. Sir, the young madam said that you are old meat and she likes fresh meat. She wants to divorce you. Man, she dares? That night. I heard that you want to divorce me? Yes. You really want to divorce me? Yes. He walked forward slowly, and his gaze swept past the magazine on the side. His devilishly charming face was filled with suppressed anger, and his cold fingers gently pinched her chin. Because of this man? Yes. Woman, are you challenging my bottom line? She raised her eyes and was fearless. Yes. Veins popped out of his skin. His thin lips curled up, and he tore off her dress. I will make you make sounds other than yes. Purple marks appeared all over her body. She was taken aback. The divorce was unsuccessful. She ran away from home. Bodyguard, sir, something bad has happened. The young madam is missing. Man, how dare she? Many years later, she returned as the queen of movies. As soon as she got off the plane, she was forced into a corner. Where do you think you're going with my seed? To get married? Can't I? Woman, don't forget. You are my wife. Unless you want to commit bigamy. The man leaned against the wall with one hand and squinted his dark eyes dangerously. Within a few days, a marriage advertisement had spread to every corner of the city of Brisk. Mother of Stars, the Yu family, was looking for a husband for all the single men in the city with a dowry of 100 million. The man stood up abruptly and his face turned green. Shenhuan, how dare you? He wanted to see who dared to marry his woman. Cohabitation. Hey, are you asleep? The woman patted his shoulder. The man looked up but didn't make a sound. Are you really asleep? The woman didn't give up and continued to harass him. There was still no response. The woman poked him again. The man finally lost control and pressed the woman under him. If you're not sleepy, then don't sleep. Ugh. Her words of resistance turned into soft moans. Oh, that's not it. She just wanted him to go over the script with her, cutie bow. At the dinner table, a certain baby pouted and complained. Mom's cooking sucks. That's true. Little Flying Sky doesn't even eat your mom's cooking. A certain dad couldn't help but complain. Little Flying Sky was their family dog. Sucks? Then why did you finish it all? A certain mom was angry. Dad's cooking is worse than a dog's, a certain baby said. Finally, she brought up a news story for the baby. Rumored best actor spoils his husband to the bone. Chapter 410. Air Dai was still taking care of her wound. Why did she suddenly disappear? Xiao Qing's face was as pale as a ghost. She grabbed Gu Panpan and asked anxiously, what happened? Yin Qiyue tried to hold on and said, I was in my room, researching the antidote. Suddenly, a group of people barged in and snatched Air Dai away. Xiao Qing closed her eyes and forced herself to calm down. After a while she said, Panpan, bring Qiyue and my son. Don't bother about Fujingma. Leave capital city first. Gu Panpan was about to speak when she saw Xiao Qing suddenly open her eyes. Her eyes were cold. You will only be a burden if you stay. Bring Qiyue and the baby away. That will be the greatest help to me. Yan Hanqing stepped forward and said, Panpan, bring them away. I will stay. Enough. You leave too. Xiao Qing said indifferently. Don't forget what you promised me. Yan Hanqing's face was very ugly. He clenched his fists tightly and said after a while, I know. Xiao Qing watched them leave. When she turned back to look at those people in capital city, there was only killing intent in her eyes. She and Air Dai had put in so much effort to save capital city. In the end, Air Dai was injured and was snatched away by someone. If anything happened to Air Dai, she would destroy the entire capital city. So what if she killed everyone? At most, they would be buried with Air Dai. Guessing that Gu Panpan and the rest had already left the city, Xiao Qing said indifferently, Who took my lover away? Hand him over. The bureau chief was stunned and said, What happened? At this moment, the Li family members who were standing at the side stood out. What happened? Let me say it. The woman standing in front of you is not a hero at all. The man beside her is a zombie. I'm afraid this incident was caused by her. No matter how shocked everyone was, Xiao Qing just stared at the man from the Li family. Are you the one who kidnapped my lover? Hand him over. The bureau chief frowned and said to the man from the Li family, "If you took her away, then bring her back. This must be a misunderstanding." Old Master Qin also said coldly, "Li Yaowu, we all know who's behind this. Don't throw dirty water on Xiaoqing. Hand him over first." The man from the Li family said, "Qin, you're with her, aren't you? Otherwise, why would he protect her like this?" He took a step forward, then turned around and said to everyone, "Who doesn't have a family member who was eaten by zombies? Who didn't have friends?" That was what zombies said. This woman, she harbored evil intentions. She actually raised a zombie. Maybe she killed a lot of people in secret to feed this zombie. Don't talk nonsense if you don't have evidence. Qin Zishi frowned and said coldly, "Evidence?" Li Yaowu sneered and said, "Then I'll show you the evidence, Director Chen." The director of the research institute stood out and said, "Mr. Li did send a zombie to our institute today." It was at level 4, and looked like an ordinary human. Only after it was injured could we find that its skin had rotted. Air dye was in the research institute. Xiaoqing, who came to this conclusion, calmed down a lot. However, she was more and more worried about whether air dye would be hurt. She looked at the people with superpowers and ordinary people. They were also saved by air dye, and were one of the reasons why air dye was injured. However, these people all looked at Xiaoqing suspiciously and whispered in private. Gradually, voices began to come from the crowd. Chapter 411. Saving people? I don't think she has any good intentions. Maybe she was the one who created the green fog. Otherwise, why can't others cure it? But she can. Which good person would raise a zombie? I think there must be something wrong with her. Do you think she will really catch people alive and feed them to zombies? Xiaoqing was a little disappointed, but only a little. She didn't have any hope for the so-called human nature. Even if she absorbed the fog with the intention of strengthening herself, she still saved everyone. But the kindness of saving lives couldn't be compared to a few words of sowing discord. Xiaoqing was very calm. "Are you done? Give me the person." "Xiaoqing, why are you so arrogant? Do you think you are already invincible?" Li Yaowu said coldly. "Let me tell you, if you can step out of the capital today, my name will be written upside down. If you dare to touch Xiaoqing today, my name will be written upside down." Old Master Qin also stepped forward and said expressionlessly. He believed that Xiaoqing was definitely not a bad person. No matter whether Air Dai was a zombie or not. At least one thing was certain, and that was that Air Dai and Xiaoqing were the saviors of the entire capital. No matter what, people couldn't forget their roots and couldn't be ungrateful. Even if he didn't know Xiaoqing before, he couldn't do something like turning around and attacking his benefactor. Moreover, he and Xiaoqing were friends despite the difference in age. Li Yaowu straightened his back in front of Old Master Qin for the first time. He raised his head and said, "Old Master Qin, at this point you still want to protect her?" The bureau chief was the most embarrassed between the two. On one hand, he had a good impression of Xiaoqing. On the other hand, he couldn't allow zombies to appear in the capital. The bureau chief said with a headache, "How about this, Miss Xiao? You go back with us first. We will talk about it after we investigate this matter clearly." Xiaoqing just looked at Li Yaowu indifferently. "I'll say it one last time. Hand over the Air Dai or die. In this big capital, no one can stop me from killing you. As long as you say no, I will let your blood splatter in 5 steps. Do you believe me?" Xiaoqing tilted her head slightly, a cold smile on her lips. Seeing this, Li Yaowu suddenly felt somewhat flustered. For some reason, he did not dare to say those words of rejection, those tough words. She glanced at everyone and said, "I never thought that I saved anyone. I just wanted to do it, so I did it. So from the beginning, I never thought of asking for anything in return. Even now, I'm still saying the same thing. Hand over my lover, and I'll take him away. If you don't hand him over, it doesn't matter. At most, I'll turn the world upside down." Apart from the people she cared about, the life and death of everyone else always depended on her mood. Now these people wanted to hurt her Air Dai. Then, they could not blame her for being ruthless. Li Yao was very flustered at first, but when he saw that the people around him were all high-level paranormals, he felt that he was too cowardly. So he braced himself and said, "Maybe you have some conspiracy. You want to leave just because you want to? What kind of place do you think Jingdu is?" Xiaoqing tore the space apart easily, then appeared in front of him and grabbed his neck. Suddenly, she stretched out her fingernails and inserted them into his flesh. As long as she used a little force, she could break Li Yao's neck bone. No one had expected Xiaoqing to suddenly make a move. They had thought that Xiaoqing was just joking. Even a level 5 paranormal couldn't kill Li Yao while he was under heavy protection, right? Then, Xiaoqing easily grabbed Li Yao in her hand. She lifted Li Yao like a dead dog and said, "Take me to the air dye." Chapter 412. Li Yao's eyes rolled back. Seeing that he was about to die, Xiaoqing loosened her grip slightly. "Don't make me repeat myself." The bureau chief didn't want to go against Xiaoqing, so he waved his hand. "Take her there." President Chen widened his eyes and said, "No, this is the first time I've seen a zombie with such clear consciousness. If we can dissect him and figure out why he can retain his consciousness, we might be able to develop a drug to resist the zombie poison. He's willing to save the capital, so he must be willing to sacrifice himself for the people of the country." "Sacrifice my ass." Xiaoqing waved her hand and vines drilled out of the ground, surrounding President Chen in the middle. She said with a cold gaze, "Since you're so righteous and willing to sacrifice yourself for the country and the people, then sacrifice yourself for me first." With that, she controlled the vines to pierce President Chen's body and injected a little bit of fog into his body. The fog spread quickly in the human body and soon reflected on the surface of his body. The specific reaction was that President Chen started to feel a little itchy on his neck. When he reached out to scratch it, rotten flesh fell off. He didn't know whether he was panicking or in despair. He desperately covered his neck and screamed, "No, no, no." Xiaoqing said coldly, "Don't you need a zombie with consciousness? You're one now. Thank you for sacrificing yourself for the country and the people. I think that a patriotic person like you must be very willing to lie on the operating table in the laboratory." At this moment, those people looked at Xiaoqing as if they were looking at a demon. They couldn't help but retreat, afraid that they would become like President Chen. President Chen turned around in horror to pull them. "Save me! Save me!" However, no one dared to approach him. One retreated faster than the other. He was completely desperate and pounced on Xiaoqing with a roar. "You demon, I'm going to fight it out with you." Xiaoqing waved her hand gently, and the man-eating flower drilled out. It opened its petals wide and waited for President Chen to pounce on it. It swallowed President Chen, who was pouncing over. After swallowing it, it closed its petals and prepared to digest the delicacy. When it was halfway digested, it opened its petals and, like a human vomiting, spat out the half-melted President Chen. After vomiting, she would cover her head with a leaf. Sob, sob, sob. It was so difficult. Some people in the crowd couldn't help but want to vomit. Vomiting was contagious. If one person vomited, others would vomit as well. Xiaoqing didn't care about their reactions. She just frowned and said, "Take me to see my lover. How many times do I need to say it? I don't mind killing 2 more people." Only then did one of the researchers lead Xiaoqing to the research institute. Xiaoqing carried Li Yao and followed behind. When she passed by Old Master Qin, she said indifferently, "Old Master Qin, no matter what happens later, please don't interfere. Even if I die, it's fine, okay?" Old Master Qin understood what Xiaoqing meant. She didn't want to implicate the Qin family. Today, there would definitely be a bloody battle between her and the Li family. If the Qin family interfered, it was very likely that the Qin family would become the target of public criticism. Of course, there was one thing that Old Master Qin didn't know. Xiaoqing was already prepared to go all out. Today, she, the Li family, and those who dared to stop her would fight to the death. If the members of the Qin family were present, She would have to worry about accidentally injuring them, which would distract her. As long as the members of the Qin family weren't present, anyone who tried to stop her was her enemy. So what if she killed them all? You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.